Hey everyone, Firescale Audiobooks here. If you'd like to request updates on any novel, consider becoming a Patreon or Ko-fi member. Based on your membership tier, I'll create additional parts for the novel you're interested in. Normally, I'll only upload 4 to 5 parts of each novel due to limited time. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It really helps.
Zhang Xiaoying bit down on her bottom lip as an intense feeling of pain appeared in her nether region. It felt as though she was pierced by a sharp sword. She looked down at her stomach where there was a slight bulge, and a wave of inexplicable emotions surged through her mind. Although she knew that she would one day lose her virginity, she had never imagined that it would be lost this way, to some random esteemed guest within the Burning Lotus auction house. "You really are a foolish woman." Su Yang sighed inwardly upon seeing the tears that had been resisting to fall in Zhang Xiaoying's eyes finally fall down her face. This Wang Ming is an inner court disciple at the Burning Lotus Palace, and he is in the process of becoming a core disciple. He is a genius with no equal within the inner court, and he is the cousin of Elder Wang, but he is also an individual whose heart is rotten to its core. There are many rumors of Wang Ming abusing his status to force outer court disciples to serve him in bed. Zhang Xiaoying explained her situation to Su Yang without needing him to ask, almost as if she knew that he would eventually ask. And prior to coming to this Burning Lotus auction house, under the guise of needing to speak to me of private matters, he requested that I visit his living quarters alone when I return. Zhang Xiaoying trembled upon recalling the wicked smile this Wang Ming had when he spoke to her. At that moment it felt like she was standing before a bandit with a prestigious status. I have a few friends within the outer court that have already fallen victim to this Wang Ming's vicious hands, and knowing that he would soon become a core disciple, an undeniable existence within the sect, I would not be able to escape from him. Su Yang silently listened to her story that was very common within the cultivation world, where those without status or power are always under the pressure of someone stronger. Incidents of someone of a higher status or rank pressuring those with a lower status to do unethical deeds are a common occurrence not just in this world but also in his previous life in all 4 worlds. Though it also happens in the mortal world where there are noble ranks and social classes. Su Yang understood very well the cruelty of this world, even experiencing the feeling of powerlessness himself a few times while being pressured by those who used to stand above him. I would go to the sect elders, but I already know the outcome of such meaningless actions. Zhang Xiaoying closed her eyes and tightly embraced Su Yang with her face directly on his chest. I am just an ordinary outer court disciple whilst Wang Ming is a genius with a bright future ahead of him. They will most certainly rather allow him to perform a few immoral acts than to cause a commotion for someone like me, who has no noteworthy background, not to mention that he is also the cousin of Elder Wang. After crying silently on Su Yang's chest for a few minutes, Zhang Xiaoying slowly released her embrace on him and smiled. I apologize to the esteemed guest for the unsightly display, and I greatly appreciate the esteemed guest for listening to my boring story. Please allow me to serve you to the best of my abilities. Zhang Xiaoying, who was sitting on Su Yang's laps, began to move her hips slowly. Mmm. She covered her mouth with one hand to prevent herself from filling the room with her moans while the other held onto Su Yang to support her balance. Although it was extremely painful at first, she quickly familiarized herself with the feeling, soon finding only pleasure within that pain. Her body was heated, and her stomach felt like it was burning, but she continued moving her body, looking like she was doing squats. This moment, the only thing that could be heard by Zhang Xiaoying was the sound of her muffled breathing mixed in with moaning, and the vulgar noises coming from her soaking wet cave, with the rowdiness from the auction room completely removed from her perceptions. While Zhang Xiaoying enjoyed herself, Su Yang silently recalled all the injustice he had experienced in the earlier years of his past life. As someone from a common background, he knew very well the sorrow and suffering those without power or status had to endure from those who did. Su Yang gazed at the dazed face of Zhang Xiaoying, who seemed to be lost in pleasure, and then he looked at Wang Shuren, who was still on the stage, seemingly pondering about something. By this time, the auction had already sold a few items, and there were 36 monster cores currently displayed on the stage. When the guests saw how many monster cores were together in one place, their eyes bulged with surprise. There are so many monster cores. How many is that? Wang Shuren smiled upon seeing the crowd's surprise. These are all lightning monster cores from the lightning cats that have recently been running rampage at the Thunder Valley, and they were all obtained by a single powerful individual. There are 36 of them to be auctioned today. Someone managed to obtain 36 monster cores alone? Whoever is auctioning this must have killed at least 1,000 lightning cats. Crowd was shocked after the exact number of monster cores was revealed. The chances of obtaining a monster core were 1 in 100, so for there to be 36 monster cores of the same beast, someone would have needed to slay thousands of lightning cats. At least that was what the guests believed, and they could not imagine the massacre that must have happened at the Thunder Valley for there to be so many monster cores in one place. There are 28 elementary grade and 8 profound grade monster cores here, but before I start the auction, I have to mention that the seller had personally stated that the starting price for the elementary grade would be at 15 spirit stones whilst the profound grade would be 30 spirit stones. Normally, an elementary grade monster core is worth anywhere from 5 to 10 spirit stones depending on its quality, and a profound grade monster core is worth twice as much. When the crowd heard the outrageous price of 30 spirit stones for one monster core, the auction room overflowed with complaints. 30 spirit stones for a mere profound grade monster core. There is a limit even to robbery. One of these monster core is almost a fourth of what I paid for my spirit sword. Wang Shuren could only smile bitterly at the complaints, but such reactions were expected from the crowd and considered natural, as she also complained about tripling the price. I understand your frustrations, but hear me out. Almost as though her voice carried traces of magic, Wang Shuren's gentle voice instantly calmed the entire room. Due to the constant hunting at the Thunder Valley for the past few days, nearly all of the lightning cats there have been massacred, so there will surely be a scarcity for lightning cat monster cores for at least a few years, hence their increased price. When the guests realized the reason for the absurd price, their eyes radiated with a certain light. The majority of the people there were rich people, so when there was a chance to make money, they were all able to sense it. Now that I have explained the reason for their price, let's start with the elementary grade monster cores, shall we? The first one will be an inferior quality monster core with the starting price at 15 spirit stones, 16 spirit stones, 17 spirit stones, 18 spirit stones. Crowd began offering their price one after another. 30 spirit stones. Suddenly, someone almost doubled the previous offer, surprising many people there. Was there an idiot within this auction room? Why would anyone pay so much for one monster core when there are still so many monster cores left? When the people there turned to look at the person who had called out the offer, their eyes widened with surprise upon seeing that the individual was actually a striking beauty. However, when the crowd noticed her unique white robes, their expressions instantly stiffened with some even frowning. Of course, someone as beautiful as her would be a disciple of that despicable Profound Blossom sect. Fuck. Why do they have all the beauties and handsome ones? This isn't fair. Crowd began complaining inwardly, but for a different reason. Through the female disciple from the Profound Blossom sect won the first bid for the monster core. The second one instantly started. 20 spirit stones. The female disciple was the first to announce her offer, dumbfounding many people there. 21 spirit. 25 spirit stone. Without even allowing the second offer to finish, the female disciple offered an even higher price. Her actions caused the auction room to turn silent, as everybody there wondered why she was being so domineering over a few monster cores. Wang Shuren smiled slightly when she saw the situation. Su Yang was also from the Profound Blossom sect, so the possibility of them having a connection with each other was relatively high. Then on to the third monster core. 20 spirit stones. The same female disciple was the first to offer again. Her actions now shocked the crowd. Just how many monster cores does she plan on buying today? Could she be trying to buy all of the monster cores so she could control their value? A few came to the conclusion that she was trying to hog all of the monster cores so she could sell them at an even higher price later on, so they also began to bid. 21 spirit stones, 30 spirit stones, 31 spirit stones, 35 spirit stones. Holy shit! Just how rich is this girl? How could she possibly afford to spend so much on these monster cores? The auction continued, and within the span of several minutes, over half of the monster cores were sold. However, unlike the female disciple from the Profound Blossom sect, no one there was willing to spend recklessly on monster cores, hence she won every single bid, spending over 400 spirit stones for 18 elementary-grade monster cores. Additionally, the way this female disciple tossed around her wealth caused everybody there to sweat profusely. Just who was this female disciple from the Profound Blossom sect, and how could she have so much wealth to spend? Meanwhile, Su Yang suddenly stood up from his seat, taking along with him a startled Zhang Xiaoying, whose body was still connected to him. He carried Zhang Xiaoying in his arms, with his hands on her soft buttocks, and he approached the glass wall where he laid her back against it. For your courage and boldness, I shall answer your plea. My plea. Zhang Xiaoying looked at him with a confused expression. Since when did she request him for anything? Su Yang suddenly began moving his hips for the first time since they connected bodies, his violent dragon fiercely thrusting into Zhang Xiaoying's tight hole. His sudden actions caused an incomprehensible feeling of pleasure to overwhelm Zhang Xiaoying's body, causing her to moan loudly. Esteemed guest. Wait, Zhang Xiaoying felt not only pleasure but also fear at this moment. Her back was tightly pushing against the glass wall, and that gave her an insecure feeling. Although it was near impossible, what if the impossible happens and the glass wall shatters? What if because her body was directly against the glass wall, the view of her naked back and round buttocks would suddenly be revealed to everybody within the auction room? All these insecurities and unnecessary worries began appearing in Zhang Xiaoying's head, but a profound pleasure that continuously surged through her body kept her mind occupied and helped her throw away all those thoughts, enabling her to focus on the feeling of Su Yang's soft skin and the warmth of his body. This unprecedented pleasure that Zhang Xiaoying was feeling lasted for a few more minutes before Su Yang inevitably pulled his penis out of her body. And the instant his thing unplugged itself, a large amount of liquid shot out like an erupting volcano, covering Zhang Xiaoying's body with white, sticky substances. After ejaculating, Su Yang gently laid Zhang Xiaoying's twitching body on his seat. However, before he could leave her side, she grabbed him by his hand and said, "Esteemed guest, please allow me to clean you up." Su Yang said nothing and allowed Zhang Xiaoying to clean his penis with her mouth. Now that we are done with the elementary-grade monster cores, let's begin with the profound-grade monster cores. The starting bid for the first one will be 30 spirit stones, 40 spirit stones. Once again, the female disciple started the bid, increasing the price by 10 spirit stones. She still has the wealth to buy more monster cores? By now, the guests there nearly gave up on trying to outbid this female disciple. Although they are all wealthy people, there was a difference between rich cultivators and rich mortals as the cost of their resources was just too vast. Soon, the bidding for the second profound-grade monster core began, and unsurprisingly, the female disciple managed to outbid everyone there without any troubles. The third profound-grade monster core was next, but once again it was also quickly snatched by the female disciple. The fourth, the fifth, all the way to the last profound-grade monster core, this female disciple bid on them without fail. At the end of all this, the female disciple ended up spending over 800 spirit stones for all 36 enlightening monster cores. It was an unimaginable amount of wealth by most people there. Through the end of the monster cores auction, the female disciple walked up to the stage in graceful steps that emitted a feeling of proudness to collect her monster cores. When she held the monster cores in her hand, a slight smile appeared on her beautiful face. When the people there saw her smile, their hearts began throbbing faster and harder. Although they were aware of the fact that she belonged to the Profound Blossom sect and was most definitely a slut, they couldn't help but admire her beauty. After the female disciple received the monster cores and went back to her seat, the auction resumed. A couple more items later, Wang Shuren revealed to the crowd a small steel ring. This is a spirit-grade storage ring. It has the ability to store many items within and retrieve them at will. Not only is it a great addition for those who wish to travel without the need to carry luggage, but it also has enough room to fit 2 large beds inside. The starting bid will be 75 spirit stones. 80 spirit stones. One of the guests shouted. 81 spirit stones. Another shouted. 82 spirit stones. 83 spirit stones. 84 spirit stones. The auction became heated with the appearance of the storage ring, as it was also considered a spiritual treasure, just like the spirit sword. Suddenly, a deep voice echoed in the room. 100 spirit stones. When the deep voice resounded, Wang Shiren looked at VIP room, her face expressing surprise. He's finally decided to buy something? And here I thought he was only here to sell his monster cores, she thought herself. After Su Yang offered 100 spirit stones for the storage ring, the place suddenly became quiet. However, the stillness lasted only for a few seconds until a familiar-sounding voice resounded, breaking the silence. 125 spirit stones. When the people looked to the sound of the voice, they saw that it was the female disciple from the Profound Blossom sect. She's finally set her eyes on something again. It's over, she's already won this. People sighed after seeing the female disciple start bidding again. 150 spirit stones. Su Yang's disguised voice resounded a second after the previous offer. 175 spirit stones. The female disciple glared at the glass wall to the VIP room and offered. A few seconds passed after the female disciple's offer, yet Su Yang did not make a counteroffer. Some more seconds passed, and right when the female disciple became confident that it was her victory, Su Yang's disguised voice resounded once again. 250 spirit stones. Crowd nearly cried out loud when they heard the new offer. A spirit-grade storage ring would cost at most 100 spirit stones, so the previous offer of 175 spirit stones was already considered an exaggerated amount, yet this individual was willing to add another 75 spirit stones? To dare throw so much money, no wonder why this individual was in the VIP room. When the female disciple heard Su Yang's new offer, she bit her lips out of frustration. Because she had already spent the majority of her wealth on the monster cores, she was unable to outbid this new offer. Is there anyone else who'd like to try to surpass the esteemed guest's offer? Wang Shiren asked everyone there after waiting for a few moments without any new offers. The auction room turned dead silent. Nobody there was able to beat Su Yang's offer. Hell, even if someone there had the wealth to outbid Su Yang, that individual wouldn't be stupid enough to pay such an overwhelming amount for a mere storage ring. Then this storage ring will be sold to the esteemed guest for 250 spirit stones. Congratulations, Wang Shiren announced with a bright smile. Inside the VIP room, after he won the bid for the storage ring, Su Yang stood up from his seat and approached the door. Esteemed guest, Zhang Xiaoying, who is now fully dressed and elegant-looking again, called for him when she noticed his actions. I have gotten what I came here for. There is no longer any need for me to be here. I understand. Zhang Xiaoying nodded and began leading him back to the room where he first met Wang Shiren. Upon arriving at the room, Su Yang sat down on the couch and closed his eyes to cultivate the tiny amount of yin essence he'd obtained from Zhang Xiaoying. Although the amount was meager and was barely able to help his cultivation base, it was still better than nothing. After meeting her, I have finally reopened my eyes and was able to see my own foolishness. I am no longer the revered immortal I once was, but a mere profound spirit realm cultivator, a level considered less than an ant in my previous world. I really need to step up my efforts in cultivating, he silently sighed to himself. Inside the VIP room, Zhang Xiaoying silently stood beside Su Yang as he cultivated. Her gaze was fixated on him, seemingly in deep thoughts. Although she didn't hold any emotions towards him in the beginning, her heart was showing clear affection for him at this moment. Though she was also aware that her love would never be realized, as she could tell that their embrace held no meanings and was mostly due to her imposing herself on him. Time passed quickly, with an hour of time disappearing within the blink of an eye. However, for Zhang Xiaoying, who was constantly thinking about Su Yang and their little embrace, it felt like many hours had passed. The door to the room suddenly opened, and Wang Shuren walked inside with a bright smile while saying in a loud voice, "Congratulations, esteemed guest. You have managed to sell all of your monster cores for a grand total of 1,082 spirit stones." Su Yang slowly opened his eyes to look at Wang Shuren, but his gaze was not filled with joy, something she had expected. Instead, his gaze was filled with a slight sense of anger. When Wang Shuren noticed his serious gaze, her bright smile instantly disappeared from her face, and she turned to look at Zhang Xiaoying and said a single word. "Leave." "Yes, Madame Wang." "No, she will stay." Su Yang interrupted them with a clear and domineering voice, causing the both of them to look at him with surprise. He continued, "Sit down, Wang Shuren. I have an important matter I'd like to speak to you about. Does this matter require the presence of a lowly servant?" Wang Shuren asked with a frown. Su Yang did not answer her and only continued to look at her with a serious expression. Wang Shuren glanced at Zhang Xiaoying with an unpleasant gaze and wondered what happened while she was away before sitting down. "So? What happened? Did she do something that had offended you?" she asked the moment she sat down. Su Yang did not answer her question and instead mentioned a single name. Wang Ming. Hearing the name of her cousin coming from his mouth, Wang Shuren's eyes widened from shock. How'd he learn of that name, and what did he have to do with this weird situation? Realizing what he was trying to achieve by making her stay, Zhang Xiaoying also stared at Su Yang with wide eyes. "Esteemed guest." "There's no need to," she hastily tried to speak before getting cut off by Wang Shuren. "Shut up. We are talking here. Since when did you obtain the privilege to join in on our conversation?" Just Zhang Xiaoying's presence being in this room was already more than enough to annoy her, let alone jumping into their conversation with a status as a mere servant. "What does my cousin Wang Ming have to do with this?" Wang Shuren asked Su Yang after scolding Zhang Xiaoying. "I have recently learned of a few unsettling rumors about your cousin Wang Ming, and getting straight to the point, I find his very existence very unpleasant," Su Yang said with a calm yet cold voice, sending chills all over Wang Shuren's body. Wang Shuren finally understood the situation when he mentioned about these rumors of her cousin Wang Ming, as he was a known troublemaker within his sect. Why you want to kill him over a few rumors?" she asked him with an anxious expression on her face. "I have tried many times to change his character, but even if he is my cousin, I cannot do much if he doesn't listen. Not to mention that the top figures within sect are also protecting him." Su Yang, still with a nonchalant expression, said, "No, I will not kill him, but if he, from this point forward, so much as touch even a strand of hair on her hair, or anyone for that matter, I will not only pay him a visit, but I will also hold you accountable." When he mentioned her, his gaze was on Zhang Xiaoying, who was standing beside him with her head lowered in distress. "You..." Wang Shuren looked at Zhang Xiaoying with wide eyes and an opened mouth. "I do not care how you will deal with him, but if you tell me again that you, a sect elder, cannot even control your cousin from your own sect, how can I trust you to deal with my personal problems?" Wang Shuren silently cursed at Wang Ming in her heart at this moment. To think that because of his unsightly actions within the sect that she'd lose the chance to become an alchemy master, she will have to force him to listen to her even if it kills him. After taking a moment to calm herself, Wang Shuren took a deep breath and nodded. "I understand. I will take care of Wang Ming the moment I return to the sect. I hope my decision to trust you today does not bite back." Su Yang then turned to look at Zhang Xiaoying, who was profoundly dazed from watching the situation. "You do not have to worry about this frog called Wang Ming trying to pressure you anymore. If he continues to bother you, I'm sure that your honorable sect elder here will quickly and efficiently deal with it, correct?" he said as his gaze casually glanced at Wang Shuren, who obediently nodded to confirm his words. Seeing this, tears began falling from Zhang Xiaoying's face. To think that he'd go through the effort to help her, who was feeling helpless and desperate all this time, She didn't know how to react or what she could do to repay him, as her embrace was only a selfish act that was acted upon desperation. Thank you, thank you. The only thing she could do at this moment was to speak her heart, which ended up causing her tears to fall even faster. Wang Shuren's jaw dropped. Although she understood the situation, she was still puzzled as to how it came to this point. A few moments later, when Zhang Xiaoying finally calmed down, Su Yang returned to doing business with Wang Shuren. I have already deducted the Burning Lotus Auction House's 10% share along with the 250 spirit stone you spent on the storage ring, leaving you with a total of 724 spirit stones, said Wang Shuren as she handed Su Yang the silver ring in her hands. Upon accepting the storage ring, Su Yang took a peek inside the silver ring, and within his mind appeared a clear and realistic scenery of a square room with hundreds of shining azure-colored rocks piled in a corner. Using his spiritual sense only available to cultivators, Su Yang accurately counted all of the spirit stones in an instant. Very well. Now, on to our agreement. I shall part to you a technique that will allow you to become an alchemy master. Give me your forehead. Wang Shuren leaned forward while Su Yang copied. The instant their foreheads touched, a faint golden light glowed between their forehead that emitted a profound feeling. This is... Upon seeing the technique in her head, Wang Shuren nearly shouted out loud from shock. This is an immortal-grade technique. Though, she still screamed inside her heart. When she heard that Su Yang was going to give her a technique, she was expecting anything but a peerless technique at the divine immortal grade. Yet inside her head right now there was exactly an immortal grade technique. Furthermore, not only the immortal grade technique, but he also gave her the complete recipe for the profound advancement pill along with a few other recipes. After Su Yang finished transferring the technique to her, Wang Shuren stared at the empty space in front of her with a dumbfounded expression, looking like a frozen statue. A few moments later, when she finally returned to her senses, Wang Shuren stood up and walked beside Su Yang just to bend her knees to kowtow to him. Disciple Wang greets master, she said loudly. Her actions bewildered Zhang Xiaoying, who has never witnessed a sect elder kowtow before, much less a sect elder at her own sect. When did I become your master? Su Yang asked with his brows raised. The act of passing down a technique to another individual is also considered an act of acceptance between masters and disciples. Hence why Wang Shuren decided to accept Su Yang as her master when he parted her a technique that she considered as peerless and priceless. Get up, I did not give that to you so you can become my disciple. Su Yang quickly reminded her, who was clearly still affected by the shock of seeing an immortal-grade technique. Hell, even the pill recipes alone were almost enough to send her into a coma, let alone an immortal-grade technique that would create great chaos within the world if they found out. Wang Shuren smiled bitterly when Su Yang rejected her. Because of his extensive knowledge regarding alchemy, she really desired to become his disciple. But alas, if he does not want to accept her, then there was really nothing she could do. Don't forget about our agreement, Wang Shuren, and most importantly, do not disappoint me. Yes, so... Wang Shuren suddenly realized that she has yet to hear his name after all this time. What's esteemed guest's name again? She asked in an embarrassed manner. Su Yang, he replied. Su Yang. Both Wang Shuren and Zhang Xiaoying simultaneously mumbled his name. My business here is done. If you need to find me, come to the Profound Blossom sect. However, if it's not urgent, I will make you learn that I do not like to be bothered by small things. I understand, said Wang Shuren. After she said that, Su Yang turned to face Zhang Xiaoying, who was looking at him like he was a dazzling hero. He then retrieved a large handful of spirit stones from his storage ring and approached her. Esteemed guest. Zhang Xiaoying cried out when he suddenly shoved a handful of spirit stones into her embrace. Su Yang smiled and moved his lips to beside her ears and whispered, While this is as far as our relationship can go, there will always be a bond between us. And although your services were laughable, you deserve praises for the way you carried yourself. Take these spirit stones and cultivate yourself properly, and if you ever need anything, as long as I am in this world, you can seek me for assistance. The dried-up tears in Zhang Xiaoying's eyes began to form once again. Thank you. she said while trying her best not to hiccup from her tears. Su Yang then embraced her gently and kissed her forehead, shocking Wang Shuren, who had been wondering their relationship since the beginning. This slick woman. No wonder why I sensed a mature aura from her body, something that wasn't there prior to today. Wang Shuren silently cursed Zhang Xiaoying for her actions, yet she felt some jealousy towards her since Zhang Xiaoying was able to do what she couldn't despite having a lower status and a less captivating appearance overall. If anything, Zhang Xiaoying was actually closer to Su Yang than herself, who had received an immortal-grade technique from him. After Su Yang was finished with the Burning Lotus auction house, he continued to travel back to the Profound Blossom sect. Meanwhile, at the center of the Thunder Valley, the Thunder Core, a female with long silver hair hovered many meters above the ground without the assistance of a flying sword or anything of that sort. Her silver eyes were staring intensively at the small hole in the ground right below her, looking surprised by the view of the empty hole. This small hole was where the extreme Yin flower used to be, before Su Yang plucked it. Who did it? Who in this lower world could possibly have the knowledge and ability to harvest the extreme Yin flower that I'd planted? She pondered to herself, feeling more surprised by the find than anything else. The silver-haired figure descended to beside the empty hole on the ground. She had planted the extreme Yin flower at this spot many years back and would occasionally return to check its growth, and because of the harsh requirements that are needed to pluck the flower, something that she deemed impossible for the level of cultivators in this world, she didn't need to worry about it being stolen. Yet, when she returned today to check on the extreme Yin flower, the flower that she deemed to be impossible to steal was nowhere to be seen. She expected herself to get angry at whoever stole it, yet she found herself more interested in the individual who managed to pluck the extreme Yin flower. The heavenly spirit realm is considered the apex here in this world, but there are few cultivators above that level being at the sovereign spirit realm. However, even those at the sovereign spirit realm shouldn't have the ability to harvest the extreme Yin flower, unless that individual managed to master that technique. Thinking to this point, the silver-haired figure became even more puzzled. Why would someone here have that technique, let alone fully comprehend it? There's no point in trying to guess the culprit when I can personally visit this individual. The silver hair quickly ascended to the sky and closed her eyes. A few moments later, she opened her eyes and looked at the direction to the Profound Blossom sect. Even if you store the extreme Yin flower in a storage space, there are plenty of ways to find you. The silver-haired figure began flying towards the direction of the Profound Blossom sect, looking like a real fairy in the sky. Inside the White Pearl Treasury, Elder Zhao casually sat behind the counter with his eyes closed, seemingly asleep. Elder Zhao. He's returned. Suddenly, another sect elder came running into the White Pearl Treasury while shouting loudly. What the hell are you shouting about? You nearly gave me a heart attack. Elder Zhao exclaimed after nearly falling out of his chair from surprise. I apologize. The sect elder showed an apologetic smile and continued. Right. That outer court disciple you told me to keep an eye on has finally returned to the sect. What? Su Yang is back. Elder Zhao instantly stood up from his seat and asked, Where is he right now? He's currently reporting back to the mission hall. Before the sect elder could even finish speaking, Elder Zhao disappeared from the White Pearl Treasury with his last words being, Take care of this place while I am gone. Within the mission hall, Su Yang casually retrieved a few dismembered lightning cat's tail to prove that he'd completed the mission. You managed to slay 4 lightning cats by yourself? Not bad for an outer court disciple. The sect elder taking care of Su Yang praised him for his efforts. I have transferred 22 premium points to you for the completion of the mission. Thank you, said Su Yang as he turned to leave. When he reached the exit, a familiar-looking old man stood in front of him. Su Yang, right? Come with me, I have a few questions for you, Elder Zhao said to him in a stern voice. Seeing someone approach so quickly when he'd just returned to the sect, Su Yang smiled and said, Is this about the pure Yang flower? Upon hearing his question, Elder Zhao's eyes widened with surprise. You knew that I would be coming to you about that? How? He asked. Naturally, I would know when someone is always looking at me from a distance ever since I obtained the pure yang flower. Su Yang's response further shocked him. He's even aware of that? And he's known about it since the beginning? Elder Zhao cried inwardly. Since you know what I want, this will make things easier for the both of us. Follow me to where we can speak in private. Su Yang nodded and followed him out of the mission hall. Once they left, a few individuals within the mission hall that knew of Elder Zhao's status within the sect began whispering to each other, as they were pleasantly surprised to see him appear there, not to mention the reason he appeared was because of this outer court disciple. Inside one of the private rooms within the White Pearl Treasury, Su Yang and Elder Zhao sat around a small round table with two old-fashioned teacups sitting on the table. I will get straight to the point. How did you do it? How did you consume the pure yang flower and still be in one piece, even skyrocketing to the first level of the profound spirit realm from the third level of the elementary spirit realm? Elder Zhao asked him with a serious expression. Are you the curious one, or is there someone else who is curious? Su Yang said as he calmly sipped on the teacup. Elder Zhao narrowed his eyes at such words. I could tell since I first met you, but you really are a sharp kid, aren't you? Completely contrast to the rumors I've been hearing about you. To think there'd be such a crafty little brat within the sect and nobody had an idea. You seem quite talented in manipulating people. Su Yang lowered the teacup in his hands and smiled. The pure yang flower. I didn't consume it entirely, only a tiny portion of it. Ha! Elder Zhao was caught unprepared when he suddenly started talking about the pure yang flower. If I had consumed the pure yang flower entirely, I wouldn't be alive right now, and we both know that. After grinding the pure yang flower until it became powder, I consumed only just enough so that my body would not break down. That's it. Elder Zhao looked at him with a suspicious gaze. How could it be that simple? Knowing his crafty nature, surely he must have done something else to consume the pure yang flower, but what? What about the rest of the pure yang flower? What did you do with it? Although Elder Zhao wasn't convinced that it was this simple, he decided to play along with him. However, no matter how prepared he was when he heard Su Yang's answer, he couldn't help but cry out loud, nearly flipping the table in rage. I threw it away, Su Yang calmly replied. You what? Elder Zhao stood up while yelling. How could you throw away such a valuable resource? Do you have any idea how much of the sect's effort you've wasted by doing that? Su Yang shrugged and said, So what if I wasted it? I have already paid the sect for it, so why does it matter to the sect what I did with it? You little rascal. Elder Zhao said as he pointed at Su Yang with a trembling finger. I call bullshit. You do not seem like the type to waste resources like this. Tell me, how'd you consume the pure yang flower? Elder Zhao said. He knew that Su Yang was trying to hide his secret, but the patriarch had ordered him to figure out his secret so that he too could consume the pure yang flower. I have already told you everything you wanted to know. I only consumed a tiny amount and threw the rest away, as I had a change of heart after tasting it once. Even though I'd only tasted a little bit, the troubles that came afterward is just too much. I do not ever want to experience something like that again. Su Yang sighed in an earnest voice. What happened? Elder Zhao asked out of curiosity. Su Yang then patted his crotch and said, Just that tiny amount had forced my thing to stand up like a stiff rod for many days without rest, to the point where I was fearful that it might explode from the endless blood flow. It was a torturous experience that is still haunting me right now. After listening to his story that would frighten even the toughest of man, Elder Zhao asked with his forehead full of sweat, How'd you manage to make it go away? By relieving myself, obviously. But even that took days of effort before it started showing any real results. By now, Elder Zhao's eyes were wide open with shock. Su Yang had to spend days relieving himself? Why didn't he just go find a partner to help him relieve his pain? I was aware that the pure yang flower had such side effects, but to think it'd be this severe. I apologize. Elder Zhao didn't know why he apologized to Su Yang, but it came out regardless. Perhaps he felt guilty for being the one to hand Su Yang the pure yang flower, or maybe because he forced him to remember unpleasant memories. As ridiculous as it sounds, it is the truth. I threw away the remaining pure yang flower out of anger and fear from what it had done to me, Su Yang said in solemnness, and he continued, "Whether you believe it or not, that is not my problem. I have told you everything I know, so I will be taking my leave now." Just as Su Yang stood up and prepared to leave, Elder Zhao stopped him and asked, "Now that you are at the profound spirit realm, will you be taking the inner court disciple exam?" "Naturally," Su Yang replied as he stepped out of the room, leaving Elder Zhao to ponder about a few things. That rascal is really slick and mysterious. Not only was he able to act so calmly when in my presence, but he also had the guts to lie straight to my face. If only his surname wasn't Su, fuck. Elder Zhao cursed loudly, his face feeling an invisible heat, almost as though someone had recently slapped him in the face. To think that he'd allow a mere disciple to leave so easily after being taken as a fool, it felt worse than a slap in the face. Right after leaving the White Pearl Treasury, Su Yang traveled to the medicine hall, where he was warmly welcomed by the medical disciples there. "Junior apprentice brother Su. It feels like it has been forever since I last saw you. Junior apprentice brother Su, where have you been for the past week? Do you have any idea how quiet it has been around the sect without your presence here?" Su Yang was flooded by the sisters upon arrival. Everybody there seemed to want to speak with him, everyone except a single young lady, who was sitting in a corner and staring at them with an annoyed expression. "Che, why do you have to come back? I was just beginning to forget about him, too." The disciple named Xiao mumbled to herself, feeling irritated just from seeing Su Yang's face. "I am here to see Elder Lan. Is she here right now?" Su Yang suddenly asked them. When he mentioned Elder Lan, the place there quickly became quiet. Ever since Master went to speak with the Patriarch, she has locked herself in her room and would refuse to come out. Su Yang raised his eyebrows upon hearing the news. What happened had while he was away? Let me try speaking to her and I will see what I can do. Inside her room, Lan Liqing sat on her bed in the lotus position, silently cultivating. Ever since the talk she had with the Patriarch, there has been at least a dozen sect elders that had approached her with the intent to become partners. And since every sect elder within the sect was aware of her desire to remain alone, the unusual occurrence was most likely due to the Patriarch pulling a few strings from behind the scenes. However, Lan Liqing wasn't willing to allow herself to be pressured by the situation, so she decided to enter closed cultivation until a certain someone returns to the sect. Suddenly, the door to her locked room opened without any warning, causing Lan Liqing to snap open her eyes. "Who dares?" She stood up and grabbed the sword that was by the bed and faced the figure that slowly walked into the room, her heart beating erratically. However, when Lan Liqing saw the handsome face of the intruder, her eyes widened with surprise and joy. "Is this how you greet your partner who has been gone for only a few days?" Su Yang said with a smile as he walked into the room. "Su Yang, you're back." Lan Liqing threw the sword to the side and directly jumped at him. Seeing her unexpected actions, Su Yang opened his arms and welcomed her beautiful figure into his embrace. When he hugged her, he instantly noticed the changes in her body. "You have lost weight?" Su Yang's voice was gentle when he spoke to Lan Liqing, yet inside his heart there was a feeling of anger that was increasingly growing fiercer the more he realized the stress Lan Liqing had to experience while he was away. In order for her to have lost such a noticeable amount of weight, and in such a short time at that, she must have really been distressed about something. "Tell me what is troubling you, and I will immediately deal with it," he said to her in a low and assuring voice. After Lan Liqing calmed down from being embraced, she began explaining the situation to Su Yang. She told him everything from her talk with the Patriarch and how she's being pressured into finding a partner. Additionally, she used this chance to reveal her position within the sect along with her connections to the previous sectmaters as an adopted child. Now fully grasping the situation, Su Yang felt relieved that the situation wasn't as troublesome as he'd expected. Although the Patriarch had a cultivation base at the Earth Spirit realm, he wasn't at a level that would cause Su Yang to feel pressured. Su Yang, let's leave this sect, Lan Liqing suddenly said in a solemn voice. While she didn't want to leave this place she called home for many years, it would still be better than being forced into a relationship with someone she didn't desire. Su Yang's eyes slightly widened upon hearing her words. You want to leave the sect? He asked her just to make sure he was hearing correctly, as he felt that there was really no need for such actions over something this small. As long as I am a disciple in this sect, the patriarch will continue to pressure me until I become partners with another sect elder. With my cultivation base and your talent, there will be plenty other sects that will accept us if that is what you are worried about. Upon hearing her words, Su Yang couldn't help but laugh. As bad as it may sound, I hold no feelings towards this sect. If I decide to leave, then I will do it without any hesitation, and I will most certainly have no doubts after I leave, he said. Then let's leave this. However, Liqing, will you be able to say the same? Su Yang said to her as he stared at her eyes with a serious expression. If you truly want to leave this place because of your own will, then I will not stop you. But alas, that is not the case right now. I can see the reluctance in your eyes. They are telling me that you do not wish to leave this place you call home. Su Yang's words dumbfounded her. He was right. She didn't want to leave this place because that was what she desired, but because of the situation and pressure that was bearing down on her, which left her with no other choices but to leave. Seeing her eyes turning wet, Su Yang gently combed her soft hair and said with a smile, Have you forgotten about my presence here? I will ensure that you will not leave this place because of some idiot, but because you truly wish to leave. Although Su Yang's words gave her a feeling of comfort and relief, she cannot just ignore the overwhelming presence of the individual who is the main cause of her stress, the patriarch. But the patriarch? So what if he's the patriarch? Su Yang coldly snorted. A mere earth spirit realm cultivator, just leave him to me. I have not just one but many ways to deal with people like him. Lan Liqing suddenly went silent. Despite Su Yang's ridiculous statement and his cultivation that was far inferior to the patriarch who was at the third level of the earth spirit realm, when Lan Liqing heard his voice, there was nothing but confidence in her heart, and the invisible weight that has been weighing down on her for the past week suddenly disappeared, almost as though it was all an imagination. Once Lan Liqing calmed down and returned to her normal state of mind, she looked at Su Yang with yearning eyes and she said, When you left the sect unannounced, I felt for the first time in a long time, ever since I joined this sect, a sense of emptiness. Since you look like the type to know everything, do you know how I can make that feeling go away? She continued with her face quickly turning red. Hearing her question, a slight smile appeared on Su Yang's face. He did not open his mouth to answer her and instead directly went for her lips. Lan Liqing did not refuse his kiss. She closed her eyes and focused on replying to his answer. A few moments after they began kissing, Lan Liqing gently embraced Su Yang, slowly leading him to the bed behind her. Once they were on the bed, Lan Liqing began to loosen her robes, seemingly eager to feel the warmth of Su Yang's body. There's no need to be so hasty. I will not be going anywhere anytime soon. Su Yang chuckled upon seeing her eagerness to cultivate. This is all your fault. Lan Liqing's face flushed at his words. Ever since you took my Yin essence, I have been thinking about this nearly every day. Is that so? He chuckled. Then I will have to take responsibility, don't I? Naturally. Very well, then allow me to fill your emptiness. And very quickly the room began to echo with the sound of Lan Liqing's blissful voice. Many hours have passed since Su Yang went upstairs to confront Lan Liqing, yet he still seemed to be upstairs. This caused the disciples downstairs to feel anxious. Why was it taking so long? Was the situation that severe? Or did something happen upstairs? They wanted to know the reason, but they were all feeling afraid to find out. I believe that junior apprentice brother Su will manage to cheer Master up. Let's just be patient and wait until he comes down. The others nodded in agreement and continued on with their day, no longer paying too much attention to the two. But alas, it wasn't until after the night had arrived did Su Yang finally reappear before them. "Junior brother Su, you're finally back." When the disciples downstairs noticed him walking down, they all rushed to him with anxious expressions on their faces. "How is Master's condition?" they all asked him. "Everything has been resolved. She will be fine after some more rest," he said. "What happened up there? Why did it take so long?" someone asked. "Besides talking, nothing else really happened. I guess we were just so into the topic that we forgot about the passing time." "Is that so?" Although the disciples were still doubtful of what happened upstairs, as long as their master was fine, they didn't really care about the rest of the details. After they thanked Su Yang a few more times, they finally allowed him to leave. Once he left, Su Yang began making his way to his living quarters. Upon arriving at his home, Su Yang jumped onto the roof and silently sat there with his gaze at the crescent moon that was shining more beautiful and brighter than any of the previous nights he's watched it. What a beautiful moon! Seeing the elegant moon that was hanging in the starry sky like a piece of art, Su Yang reminiscences of his previous life with the moon goddess, where the moon would always shine beautifully just from being gazed at by her. "It feels almost as though you are here beside me, yet here I am, alone," Su Yang sighed. Whenever he would have the time or feel nostalgic, there would always be someone on his mind, as that was his only way to cope with the loneliness that was deep in his heart. Time slowly passed as Su Yang continued to gaze at the refined moon, seemingly lost in his thoughts. However, his dreaming was suddenly interrupted when a gentle and seemingly normal wind blew through the area. Sensing the wind, Su Yang pushed his thoughts behind his mind and stood up. He then started to look around the place, looking as though he was searching for something. However, a few moments later, when he cannot see anything out of the ordinary, he began speaking loudly to the air. "Although I cannot see you, nor am I able to feel your presence, I can sense your profound gaze staring directly at me." Completely silence. "I know you can hear me." Again, no reply. "Who are you and what do you want from me?" Su Yang tried again. Still no answer. If there were other people to witness his actions right now, they would surely be convinced that he was crazy. By now, Su Yang was feeling wary, even troubled. Although it was only for a split second, he was certain that he'd felt someone looking at him. Who could this person be that even he cannot sense? Forget about Earth Spirit Realm cultivators. Even those at the Heavenly Spirit Realm would not be able to escape his extraordinary senses that were further improved by the all-seeing celestial eyes technique. His all-seeing celestial eyes not only allowed him to distinguish beasts with monster cores from those that don't, but they also increase his senses by many folds, allowing him to see and sense things that are normally impossible for someone at his level of cultivation. Somewhere behind the night clouds, a silver-haired figure stared at Su Yang with eyes, feeling astonished by his profound senses. To think someone at the profound spirit realm was able to sense her concealing techniques just because she looked at him. Just who is this young mortal, and what kind of secrets does he have hidden? Not only was he able to pluck the extreme Een flower, but he also has this ridiculous awareness. Just as the silver-haired figure prepared to reveal herself due to her curiosity, Su Yang's voice suddenly resounded again. "You are clearly adapted to concealing yourself, but I doubt even someone at the sovereign spirit realm would be able to hide as well as you. The divine spirit realm, perhaps?" Su Yang's words dumbfounded the silver-haired figure, but what shocked her was not his speculation that she was at the divine spirit realm. It was his knowledge of the divine spirit realm that had greatly surprised her. The knowledge of the cultivation bases, and cultivation in general, in this world was greatly lacking. It was so much so that even those at the sovereign spirit realm have little to no knowledge of the divine spirit realm that was right above their current stage. Yet why did such knowledge come out from the mouth of a young mortal who wasn't even at the true spirit realm? Not to mention the clear voice he spoke in that clearly showed his familiarity with the divine spirit realm. The silver-haired figure's interest in Su Yang instantly soared. She wanted to know how this mortal knew of the divine spirit realm and where or who he'd learned it from. "So? When are you going to reveal yourself? Surely you did not come all the way here just to look at my handsome face, right?" Despite the utter lack of response, Su-young did not give up on trying to convince whoever was watching him in the shadows to come out and continued to speak to the air, his gaze constantly trying to find this individual. A few more moments later, Su-young obtained his goal when a heavenly voice suddenly resounded in his ears. First the extreme flower, now this. You really are an interesting individual, said the heavenly voice. A female. Su-young felt a sense of familiarity with the heavenly voice even though he was positive that he has never heard of such a voice before. Suddenly, the surrounding moonlight began brightening like magic, and a slim figure appeared from behind the clouds that were right above Su-young. This figure was extremely beautiful, so extremely beautiful that calling her a goddess would not be an exaggeration but an understatement. She had long silver hair and silver eyes that seemingly blended in with the moonlight that shone in the background. Her white robes fluttered in an unnatural way, making her look like a goddess descending from the heavens, and surrounding her was an otherworldly aura that could not be described with words. When Su-young first saw the peerless face of this figure, his eyes immediately widened with shock, and his heart throbbed like war drums at war. The image of the moon goddess suddenly appeared in his head, as she also had silver hair and silver eyes just like this flying individual. However, after taking another look, Su-young quickly threw away that thought, as they were only similar looking. No, that's not Yuahai, but I feel like I have met her before. Suddenly, looking as though he was enlightened, the figure of another individual appeared in his head, but unlike the mature moon goddess, this figure was much smaller. Impossible. Su-young didn't want to believe it at first, but as doubtful as he was with his own speculations, the more he looked at this silver-haired girl's face, the more resemblance he found her with the individual in his head. Chua, he mumbled in a dumbfounded voice, which was very clearly heard by the silver-haired figure. What did you just say? The silver-haired beauty instantly halted all of her movements the moment she heard Su-young's mumbling, her face full of shock and bewilderment. However, almost an instant later, she frowned and released her entire cultivation base and directed it at Su-young, who was unable to protect himself from the tyrannical pressure, causing him to cough up a mouthful of blood. Who are you? She exclaimed loudly, her gaze filled with cautiousness. Are you someone from the four divine heavens? Did the sacred moon palace send you here to come after me? Answer me right this instant, before I start tearing your limbs and force you to talk. The silver-haired beauty had expected Su-young to begin begging for his life and reveal his identity after her threats, but shockingly, Su-young did not do any of that and instead stood there with a profound smile on his face that was still dripping with blood. When the silver-haired beauty noticed his gaze that was staring at her with affection and joy, a weird feeling arose inside her heart, causing her to unconsciously weaken the pressure on him. Answer me. Who are you and how do you know my name? She repeated, her voice filled with uncertainty. Hearing her question again, Su-young straightened his back and clasped his hands behind it. Who do you think I am, little Cherith? Although my appearances may have gotten younger, I shouldn't look that different from the me in your memories. Perhaps a few slaps on your buttocks will help you recall, he said to her in a tone that was different than any tone he has spoken so far. The silver-haired beauty named Chua suddenly trembled violently. She stared at him with a wavering gaze, and her lips slowly moved. To that tone, impossible. You are supposed to be dead, she loudly exclaimed, sounding like a terrified cat, and her face paled, looking as though she was looking at a ghost. Chua staggered in midair, feeling as though the entire world was spinning. Why, you can't possibly be alive. That is impossible, she repeated, her voice filled with disbelief and shock. Su-young found her statement quite interesting. Why would she say that he was dead? After all, I have seen your lifeless body with my very eyes, she continued, dumbfounding Su-young. She had seen his dead body? How was that possible? What do you mean by that? You saw my dead body, he asked her with a frown. 2,000 years ago you were announced dead, and I had even attended the funeral. That was also where I witnessed your lifeless body within the casket with my very eyes. Su-young didn't know what to think of the situation. she really saw his dead body, then what about his current body that looked exactly the same as his previous body? And where did that supposedly dead body come from? Surely it can't be real, right? Or was his current body the fake one and his real body had long collapsed? More importantly, what did she mean by 2,000 years ago was when she attended his funeral? Could it be possible that over 2,000 years had passed since he left the eternal retribution cliff? Even though to him it felt like an instant? However, as doubtful as it sounded, that explained why she, who was only a little girl when he'd last seen her, become so developed and mature-looking. Why you are farting? This is all a ploy created by the sacred moon palace to capture me. A rascal like you cannot possibly be my senior Sue. Chua denied his existence as the tyrannical pressure reappeared, this time even stronger than the previous. I will make you die an excruciating death for trying to fool me with Senior Sue's appearance. Su Yang's eyes widened at the vicious killing intent emitted by her, even panicking when he confirmed the seriousness within her diamond-like eyes. This rate, she will really kill him out of anger. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Su Yang's head and he furiously shouted, "What an ungrateful kid you are, Chua! After all that I have done for you when you were just a baby, and this is how you repay me? By aiming for my life. I am disappointed in you. I have even changed your dirty diapers numerous times. I still remember it clearly, that small crescent moon birthmark you have imprinted right under your belly button." When Chua heard Su Yang's furious shouts, her heart skipped a beat even though her cultivation base was many times superior to his profound spirit realm. However, what caused her to drop from the starry sky was not his voice, but his remarks on her birthmark that only two people in this world knew. One of these two people being her mother and the other being the mentor who treated her as though she was his real daughter because her real father, the moon god, was never there for her. Senior Sue! All the killing intent in the air quickly dispersed like smoke on a windy day, and Chua descended from the sky to stand before Su Yang on the roof, nearly tripping and fall upon landing. She looked at him with her beautiful silver eyes, her mouth trembling, looking as though she was holding in her tears. Why you are really... Senior Sue? She asked him in a low, shaky voice that was still filled with doubt. After all, she had definitely witnessed for herself Su Yang's dead body during the funeral 2,000 years ago, and she'd believed that he was gone since then. How was he still alive? What really happened to him? And why was here in this world? Su Yang showed an affectionate smile towards her, who was slowly approaching him like a toddler trying to reach her parents. He widened his arms and said in a gentle voice, "Although I do not know what had happened to you or the four divine heavens after I left, there is anguish deep in your eyes, and I can clearly see that. Come, Chua, tell me about it, as you'd always complain to me about your troubles. Senior." Sniff. Senior Sue. Chua jumped into his arms and began crying her eyes out. Despite her age that was over 2,000 years old, when in front of Su Yang, she felt like she was still a child who barely knew how to talk. "You are alive, you really are alive." When she felt the way Su Yang caressed her hair and patted her head, all the doubt in her head about his identity instantly disappeared, as the feeling of his touch was the only thing in this world that could not be duplicated. As for Su Yang, there was only joy in his heart at this moment. Even though he was embracing a peerless beauty that could easily destroy a continent or two with just her appearances, there was not even a tiny fragment of impure thoughts in his head, only pure love and tenderness. You are already an adult, yet here you are, crying in the arms of a 16-year-old like a crybaby. Su Yang chuckled at her actions, but she didn't care and continued to tightly hug his robes. After taking a few moments to cry all of her tears out, Chua looked at Su Yang and said with a serious expression, "Where have you been for the past 2,000 years, and what are you doing here in this world, even taking the appearance of some mortal kid? Do you have any idea the turmoil that happened around the four divine heavens after your death?" Su Yang smiled bitterly and explained his situation to her. He started from when he met the mysterious old man who offered a helping hand to help him escape the eternal retribution cliff to how he ended up in this world instantly after. So you see, although 2,000 years may have passed for you, only a month's time has passed for me. Unbelievable. Chua mumbled, feeling dizzy from his story. Enough about me, now tell me about your end. What happened to the four divine heavens and why are you here? Where is this place? And you mentioned the sacred moon palace wanting to capture you. Why is that? You are the daughter of Yuahai, the goddess of the moon from the sacred moon palace, who particularly owns the place alongside the moon god. When Su Yang mentioned Yuahai, her mother, Chua's expression darkened and her skin paled. Mother, she is no longer in this world, she suddenly said in a low voice. WWH, what did you just say? Upon hearing her words, Su Yang's eyes widened with disbelief. His gaze filled with shock, and a wave of deep pain jolted his mind, nearly causing him to fall to his knees. He began staggering backward, and suddenly all the blood from the pressure that was suppressed within his body were all coughed up at once, staining the roof with even more blood. Senior Su. Chua made a terrified expression when Su Yang suddenly collapsed on the roof. Her body instantly reacted, and she flew towards his falling body. I apologize, that was unsightly of me, Su Yang said once he regained consciousness a few seconds after being in Chua's hold. Chua felt slightly guilty upon seeing the condition of his body, which was mainly caused by her pressure. Su Yang slowly stabilized himself and stood up, his lamenting gaze at the solemn moon. A moment later, he said in a composed voice, Yuhai, your mother, she's gone, huh? 2,000 years is an insignificant amount of time for immortals and is no different than a few years of time to her, yet in such a short time. How? He turned to look at her with a serious expression. What happened? How did she die? Is it related to why you are being chased by the sacred moon palace? He asked. Chua slowly nodded. It happened a few years after your death when father learned of her relationship with you, which caused a massive turmoil within the grounds of the sacred moon palace. Su Yang inwardly sighed at her words. He instantly understood the situation, and knowing the goddess of the moon Yuhai's character, she must have been the one who revealed their secrets. So you now know about my relationship with your mother, huh? Do you blame me for her death? He asked her with a bitter expression. Chua stared at him silently for a few moments before saying, I did. You did. Su Yang's eyebrows raised at her use of past tense. When mother died and I first learned of the reason, I blamed you, even loathing you for her death. But as time passed, I recalled how my mother was always smiling beside you, and only you. Father never paid attention to mother unless he needed her for something, and it was the same for me. Life within the sacred moon palace was always boring and suffocating, but your presence there changed everything. First, I never understood why my mother never smiled when she was beside my father but would always laugh when your presence was there. I never gave a thought about it because as long as mother was laughing and you were there, nothing else mattered. But after my mother and your death, I finally understood everything. Chua stared at Su Yang's trembling eyes with a clear and meaningful gaze. So I want to thank you, Senior Su, for making my mother smile. Su Yang slowly closed his eyes. He didn't want her to see the emotions flickering within. As for why I am here, I lied to father saying that I wasn't her daughter and that you, Senior Su, was my real father. You what? Su Yang's eyes quickly snapped open, his mouth wide open from shock. Because of that, I am now being hunted by the sacred moon palace, she said with a bashful smile with not even a single hint of regret in her tone, even looking proud of her decision. Why would you do that? Now the entire sacred moon palace will hunt you down until you die, Su Yang said with a huge headache. Because I wanted him to feel pain for killing mother. I do not have the strength to avenge mother even now, nor do I have any authority within the sacred moon palace, so I did what I did. I had planned on leaving the place anyway, so I might as well leave while knowing that I managed to make that bastard feel like shit. After all, what better way to make someone puke blood than to tell him that his child isn't actually his? She said with her nails digging into her skin, her eyes radiating killing intent. What a silly girl you are. Su Yang sighed deeply. Although her method was effective and had definitely dealt some serious and irreversible damage to the moon god, How did she plan on surviving this harsh world by herself without her family's background? How long has it been since you left? He asked her. About 1,500 years. What cultivation base are you at right now, and how much has your cultivation base advanced since then? The third level of Divine Lord Realm, and it has barely advanced since I left. And you plan on avenging your mother? At this rate, you will die from a natural death before avenging your mother. But I have you now, Senior Sue. And did you also plan to meet me, who is supposedly dead, here today? He asked her with narrowed eyes. Shua instantly went quiet. A few moments later, she said, I am aware that I had acted too rashly, but what else am I supposed to do? Continue cultivating myself in the sacred moon palace until I have enough strength to avenge Mother? How long will that take? Millions of years? I cannot wait that long. I left the place with everything on the line, hoping that I would encounter a miraculous event that could help me. And today, my hopes have been realized by meeting you, Senior Sue. Su Yong sighed at her words. Forget about avenging your mother, Chua, he suddenly said, dumbfounding her. Why? Aren't you also angry? Don't you also want revenge? She asked, her face filled with puzzlement. Su Yong turned around and said in a nonchalant voice, Exactly why I am telling you to forget about it, because I alone will be enough to deal with the moon god. Chua's eyes instantly widened with shock. I said I will be taking care of the moon god, so you do not have to worry about him, he repeated, and he continued. However, don't misunderstand my intentions. I am not doing this for the sake of revenge. This is something more personal, he said in a profound tone. He then said to her, It's getting cold out here, let's continue talking inside. Chua nodded, following Su Yong into his room. Before I can return to the four divine heavens, I must know where I am first. Tell me, Chua, where are we, and why is the cultivation world here so lousy? Su Yong asked her after closing the door. Long story short, shortly after you died, many new and smaller worlds began appearing around the four divine heavens from seemingly out of thin air, and this world is probably one of them. Cultivation world here is lacking simply because this world is still new and developing. Probably. What do you mean by that? Well, before arriving here, I'd entered the ancient portal of the four heavenly realms without setting a destination. Su Yong sighed again, feeling like he was talking to a child who has been doing nothing but mistakes. How could she, who was over 1,000 years old at that time, keep making so many careless and dangerous decisions? Was he at fault, since he was the one who taught her everything as he watched her grow? The ancient portal of the four heavenly realms was a heavenly device that allowed people to travel from any of the four divine heavens to another, but entering one without setting a destination would cause the individual that entered to be teleported anywhere in the universe, randomly. Su Yong then continued to listen to Chua with a pondering expression as she answered questions he's had in his mind since arriving at this world. This world has 5 major continents, and we are currently in the eastern continent. I am aware of that, but how could there be 5 continents when I've been told that there are only 4, one in each direction? The 5th continent is the Holy Central Continent, and it is located in the middle of the other 4 major continents. Each continent is separated by a vast sea called the Jade Sea, and it is not something easily traversable by the people of this world, as only those at the sovereign spirit realm can fly with the assistance of flying swords, so I wouldn't be surprised if not many knew of its existence. And from what I have seen from my time here thus far, the heavenly spirit realm seems to be the apex of cultivation for cultivators within every major continent besides the Holy Central Continent, where heavenly spirit realm cultivators are seen more often, not to mention a few that had managed to achieve the sovereign spirit realm. Chua continued to explain to Su Yong the standard of the cultivation world in this world. Additionally, their progress in cultivation is slowly but steadily progressing. Just a little over 1,000 years ago, the true spirit realm was considered the limit of cultivators. Su Yong hummed with a pondering expression. From the looks of it, this world really seemed to be a new and growing world, as all the evidence given to him by Chua, who was apparently here since the early stages, seemed to suggest it. No wonder why the profound chi in this world lacks both quality and essence. Compared to our four divine heavens that has existed for billions of years, the profound chi here is barely 2 millennia old and has yet to cultivate itself. Su Yang then looked at Q and said, "No wonder why your cultivation base is practically still the same after 1,000 years. Even if you cultivate all the profound chi in this world, it wouldn't be enough for you to make a breakthrough." Chua blushed from embarrassment when he mentioned her cultivation base. She was considered a cultivating genius in the four divine heavens before becoming a fugitive, yet she couldn't make even a single breakthrough after 1,000 years in this world. If she returned to the four divine heavens now, she would no longer be considered a genius, but a complete and utter piece of trash with zero talents in cultivation. Suddenly a question appeared in Su Yang's head. If you are not able to cultivate properly in this world, why are you still here after 1,000 years? Chua made a distressed expression after hearing his question, and she sighed. I have been trying to find a way out of this world for the past 1,000 years, but alas, even after traveling the entire world, I was unable to find an exit, not even a single clue. What? Su Yang was surprised to hear her words. She couldn't find a way to leave this place even after 1,000 years? Normally, even without the ancient portal of the four heavenly realms, there were alternate and more natural ways to travel between worlds, as that was considered to be a heavenly law in this universe. After a moment of pondering, Su Yang said in a nonchalant voice, "We can think of a way to leave this place when we reach that point, but for now I need to quickly advance my cultivation base." Are you in need of resources? Chua suddenly pointed to her storage ring and continued, I have a few things that can benefit even sovereign spirit realm cultivators in here. Do you want it? She casually offered, sounding as though it was only natural for her to give him her things. Not to mention her cultivation base was already at the Divine Lord realm, 2 whole realms above the sovereign spirit realm, making the majority of the resources in this world useless to her. Su Yang instantly raised his eyebrows, his interest piqued. What do you have in there? Let me see your storage ring, he said without feeling any shame, treating her storage ring as though it was already his property. Here you go. Chua quickly handed him her storage without a second thought, feeling as if there was nothing out of the ordinary in their actions. Shem, what is this empty storage ring? This is all you've managed to gather after being here for over 1,000 years? Do you even know how to look for treasures? However, instead of being grateful, Su Yang began scolding her for the pitiful-looking storage ring she handed him, as it was truly an embarrassment for someone at her level to collect so little with so much time. I can't help it, as it usually takes thousands of years for divine-grade medicines to grow. You do have a point. Su Yang nodded, and he returned the storage ring to her shortly after identifying the things inside. You don't want them? She asked with surprise. Of course I do. However, what am I, a mere profound spirit realm cultivator, going to do with medicines at the sovereign grade? Even the celestial body refining scripture that I am cultivating will not be able to fully suppress such strong medicines in my tiny and fragile body. I see, huh? Chu's eyes suddenly widened with shock. What did you just say? You are cultivating the celestial body refining scripture, she asked him, making sure her ears weren't playing tricks on her. The celestial body refining scripture is a heaven-defying technique that allowed the user to surpass boundaries unreachable by even immortals and was also undoubtedly one of the best cultivation techniques in the universe, with no other body refining techniques even close to being able to compare with its heaven-defying features. However, this technique was also widely known to be an unattainable treasure by many because it was always in the hands of the heavenly emperor, who was known to treat the technique as though it was his own child. How did such a treasure end up in Su Yang's hands? Surely he did not just grab it out of the heavenly emperor's hands, right? Even after many moments of pondering, nothing came to Chu's mind, no matter how much she imagined, as it was simply an unimaginable feat. Indeed, I am cultivating one of the 7 heavenly sublime scriptures, the celestial body refining scripture. If I want to consume the sovereign-grade medicines, I will have to be at least within the earth spirit realm, said Su Yang. You must have gotten it from the heavenly emperor, right? I didn't know you were so friendly with the exalted ruler of the 4 divine heavens, But then why did he send you to the eternal retribution cliff? Asked Cho with skepticism on her face, who unaware of the real reason behind his sentence. Don't tell me it was because you stole it from him? However, it was natural for her to not know the reason, as the Heavenly Emperor had kept the story of Su Yang sleeping with his daughter under the rug so that it wouldn't cause a ruckus within the world. Su Yang laughed loudly. The Heavenly Emperor is one of the strongest existents in this universe. How could I possibly steal from him when I was barely considered a peak cultivator in my previous life? I had naturally obtained it legitly. His gaze suddenly narrowed, and he mumbled, however, even I did not expect her to give me the celestial body refining scripture at that time. Hu, who heard his mumble, did not ask him about it. Although she has been with him since she was just a baby, there are still many things about him that is shrouded in mysteries. How did he meet her mother? How did he end up staying at the Sacred Moon Palace as a tutor, eventually becoming someone like a father figure to her? Speaking of body refining, Su Yang turned his gaze to look at Chua and he said, Chua, although you cannot do anything about your cultivation base here, what about your heavenly constitution, the lunar eclipse? You were able to create 2 moons the last time I saw you. How many can you create now? The lunar eclipse is an emperor-grade heavenly constitution unique to the families within the Sacred Moon Palace, and Chua, who is the direct descendants of the moon god and the goddess of moon, would naturally have it. And in comparison to Xie Xingfang's royal-grade 100 poisons body, it was 3 grades superior. Chua felt a drop of cold sweat slide down her forehead as she heard his question. T3. She said in a timid voice. Only 3? Su Yang exclaimed loudly. What have you been doing for the past 1,000 years? And you are the daughter of Yue Hai, who had one of the most powerful heavenly constitution within the family. I can only imagine the disappointed face she'd make if she were here. Despite the difference in their cultivation bases, Su Yang lectured Chua as though she was just a child. Chua lowered her head and received his lecturing without uttering a single complaint, as she was used to being lectured by him in the past when she'd screw up. And strangely, although she was being lectured by Su Yang, there was a smile on her face. In Chua's mind, it was a parent's job to lecture their kids, so being lectured by Su Yang made him look more like a father in her eyes, and that gave her a feeling of joy. What are you smiling about? Do you think I am joking with you? Listen here, Chua. When your mother was alive, I made a promise with her that if something happens to her and she could no longer be here to guide you anymore, I will be here for you until I am confident in leaving you alone. Su Yang's words quickly wiped the smile of Chua's face, and she stared at him with trembling wide eyes. Even though he was treating her like a child who could not walk by herself despite being 2 millennia old, she could not help but cry tears of joy from hearing his words. Humph. To think you were so brave and domineering just a few hours ago when we first met, you are still just a little brat. Su Yang laughed, and then he retrieved a jade box from his storage ring. Here, take this extreme Een flower that I'd found by chance. It should help your heavenly constitution even if just a little, he said to her with a nonchalant expression. Thank you, Senior Su. Chua, who was already aware that he had one in his possession, chuckled upon accepting the flower he'd taken from her without being aware that it was hers. Su Yang. We are no longer at the Sacred Moon Palace, so just call me Su Yang from now on, he suddenly said to her. Su Yang, she said with a stiff expression, feeling a bit awkward to use his name after calling him Senior Su for so long. Or you can just call me Father, ha. Su Yang said jokingly. However, his joke was taken seriously by Chua, who has been wanting to say these words to him ever since she was young. I understand, Father. Albeit it sounded shy, there was a sense of joy and pride in her voice. Su Yang looked at her with a surprised expression, but he didn't correct her, thinking it would be better for her mentally. From that point forward, the two began talking about random things. Two spoke to each other without stopping throughout the entire night, only stopping when the sunrise arrived. When the morning arrived, Su Yang walked out of the room, leaving Chua inside to cultivate the extreme Een flower he gave her. Although she had requested to follow him, he quickly denied her and told her to focus on cultivating herself while he walked his own path as a disciple in this sect. While Chua was strong enough to avoid any danger in this world, the same could not be said for Su Yang, and he was not willing to shamelessly throw away his dignity as her mentor and his pride as a man by using Chua as a shield whenever danger would arrive. Su Yang stood outside his house, feeling more refreshed than he's ever been since arriving at this world, and it felt to him as though a large mountain was lifted from his back after speaking with Chua. Then, he began walking toward the center of the sect, where the examination halls was located, a place where outer court disciples go to take exams if they wish to become inner court disciples. Once an outer court disciple advances to the profound spirit realm, they earn the qualifications to enter the examination halls, where they will undergo many assessments to prove if they have what it takes to become an inner court disciple, or not. If they pass the exam, then they will leave the examination halls as a proud inner court disciple of the Profound Blossom sect. Not only do inner court disciples receive more and better treatments than outer court disciples, but they are also allowed to enter the Chamber of Embrace, a place where the profound chi that gathers there are extremely rich, and inner court disciples would rent the place with their partner for as long as they can afford. Chamber of Embrace, besides the extra support from the sect, is one of the biggest reasons every outer court disciple are striving to become an inner court disciple. Su Yang now stood in front of the examination halls. The examination halls was a single-floored octagonal building with seemingly nothing out of the ordinary for its appearance besides its shape that looked like a Bagua symbol. When Su Yang walked inside, he was greeted by a large and spacious room with doors in every direction, and standing in the center of this octagon-shaped building was an elderly woman wearing the robes of a sect elder with some sort of jade stone in the shape of a ball on a stand right beside her. The sect elder didn't say anything when Su Yang walked inside the place. She only looked at him silently. "I am here to take the exam for the inner court," he said to her. "Put your hands on the stone of evaluation. It will determine whether or not you have reached the profound spirit realm," she said to him in a nonchalant voice. Su Yang nodded and approached the rock-looking thingy on the stand beside her, and he casually placed his hands on it. A few moments after he touched the stone of evaluation, the jade stone began glowing a green color brightly. The sect elder nodded upon seeing the green light emitted from the stone of evaluation, and she said, "I have confirmed that your cultivation base is within the profound spirit realm. Stand by for a moment until one of the examiners come to retrieve you for the exam." Su Yang nodded and began standing around. He looked at the 20 doors that surrounded this place and pondered what kind of assessments was required to be recognized as an inner court disciple. Was it an evaluation of strength? Perhaps it was a test of knowledge? Because the previous Su Yang never paid attention to these kinds of things, there were no memories in his head that could be of any help to him at this moment. After standing around for many minutes, someone finally showed up inside the examination hall. It was a charming lady wearing casual robes that did not belong to the sect, and her gaze emitted a profound feeling when her eyes met with Su Yang. However, when the sect elder noticed the face of the newcomer, her eyes widened with shock. "What are you?" "You must be Su Yang. I am one of the examiners for this place, and I will be the one to see whether you have the ability to become an inner court disciple or not," said the examiner without stopping her steps, quickly overwhelming whatever the elder lady was going to say. Su Yang glanced at this charming examiner up and down, and he inwardly chuckled at his discovery. "Elder Wu, which one of these rooms are free at this moment?" the examiner asked the dazed sect elder, who quickly responded after hearing her voice. "They are all free to use right now." "Good, then we will use this one." The examiner then walked to one of the doors randomly and beckoned Su Yang to follow her. The sect elder named Elder Wu watched with astonished eyes as Su Yang entered the room with the charming examiner, her mind filled with many questions. What is she doing here at the examination halls? And as an examiner to the boot? Elder Wu silently pondered as the door behind Su Yang closes. Inside the room that Su Yang had entered for his examination, there was only a single object in sight, which was a small bed with seemingly comfortable materials that looked more like a massage table than anything, placed in the center of this small room. "This is..." Su Yang looked at the charming beauty with a questioning look despite already having a pretty good idea what this examination signified. "I'm sure you are aware that our sect is slightly different from others. Unlike normal sex, we do not care about your combat abilities nor your raw strength as much as we care about your techniques when it comes to satisfying your partner. Thus, you will be using your techniques on me without touching any sexual body parts, and I will be grading you based on your techniques, explained the examiner. I will be grading everything from the way you move your arms and hands, the pressure of your fingers, your ability to spot your partner's weaknesses, and the overall pleasure I received from your techniques. And I will let you know in advance. My standards are extremely high and I am strict in my judgment, so if you suck, I will embarrass you, she continued, emphasizing on the will. Su Yang stood there silently while he listened to her words, his expression looking stumped. You don't look as confident now. Do you want to leave before I make you lose your pride as a man? Said the examiner with a grin on her face. Haha. Su Yang suddenly burst out laughing after hearing her words. You think you have what it takes to embarrass me? Then I shall say the same thing to you. Are you sure you want to be my examiner today? I will give you a chance to leave through that door now before I turn you into an animal only capable of screaming in pleasure. The examiner glared at him with narrowed eyes, her grin flipped upside down. Good. Then let me experience for myself your techniques and see if they are as good as you believe, or if they are as lousy as your mouth, she said in a cold voice, and she began approaching the bed that looked like a massage table. Su Yang smiled and thought to himself in a laughing tone, who would have thought that becoming an inner court disciple would be so easy? Inside the dimly lit room, the examiner slowly removed her robes in a seductive manner, revealing her jade-like skin and black undergarments. You have only an hour to showcase your techniques on me, she said. She then laid on the bed with her back facing the ceiling and she looked at Su Yang. Well, what are you waiting for? There is a grade on your efficiency too, she said. Su Yang smiled at her words and slowly approached her. He rolled his sleeves and began feeling her soft skin that was smooth like tofu. I know my skin is very smooth and captivating, but can you hurry up and show me your techniques already? Said the examiner a few seconds later, sounding impatient. Su Yang did not reply to her words and continued to caress her skin. A few moments later, he began applying pressure into his arms, and his fingers slowly dug into her skin. He then began massaging her small shoulders, her slender arms, and her graceful back, all the way until he reached her feet. Su Yang normally massaged the examiner without using any crazy techniques, which dumbfounded her when she realized it a few minutes into the examination. What the hell is he doing? She wondered to herself. She was aware of Su Yang's little massage parlor before becoming his examiner, but that only confused her even further. How could his techniques at this moment be so mediocre when everybody that has experienced his massage services praised him as some sort of massage god? There was something wrong here, and he was definitely hiding his techniques. Is he purposefully holding back? But for what? Doesn't he want to become an inner court disciple? She asked herself. Unable to understand his thoughts, the examiner decided to wait a few more minutes. But alas, 10 minutes later, Su Yang still continued to massage her with mediocrity, and this angered the examiner who came here with high expectations. After all that ignorance you showed, you show me this crap. This is no different than going to a normal massage parlor. What the hell are you doing? If you think these trash techniques for yours will be enough to qualify you as an inner court disciple, then you might as well just get out now, she angrily exclaimed. Su Yang chuckled upon hearing her words, and he said in a calm voice, There is no need to rush this examination, as I still have plenty of time left to make you regret being my examiner today. But if you are in such a rush to turn into an animal, then I wouldn't mind helping you fulfill your desires. The examiner's expression turned cold upon hearing his words. He was actually looking down on her? If he knew her real status, he wouldn't dare speak to her with such an arrogant tone. If you don't do it seriously from now on, then I will instantly fail you. Very well. Su Yang began stretching his body, looking like he was going for a run. A few moments later, he stood before the examiner and gently pressed his fingers on her back with each of his 10 fingers at a different spot, and he abruptly pushed it into her skin. Wah! The examiner suddenly felt an intense feeling of pleasure spread throughout her body, causing her to unconsciously moan. What did he just do to me? She cried inside her heart. The examiner was sure that his fingers were on her back, yet why did she feel pleasure all over her body? It felt as though Su Yang had more than a pair of hands touching her body at once. You are already feeling it? When I've barely put any effort into it? Su Yang teased, causing her face to redden. I don't need your commentary. Just continue doing like this. Another wave of pleasure assaulted her mind, this time stronger than the last, forcing another sudden moan to escape her mouth. Su Yang began pressing his fingers into particular spots on her body, each made with flawless precision along with the perfect pressure applied. What is this? I have never felt anything like this before. The examiner continued to moan with delight, her body overwhelmed with tingling pleasure. However, the feeling of her body being consumed by pleasure did not lessen as time passed, it only grew stronger. A few minutes into the real massage, the examiner suddenly said in a passionate voice, touch my other parts too. It is burning from the desire to be touched. Shem? Which part are you speaking of? I will not understand if you do not tell me clearly where you want to be touched. Su Yang said with a smug face. Here. I want you to touch me here. The examiner said as she pulled the black cloth between her legs aside, revealing her soaking wet pussy. But you said in the beginning that I am not allowed to touch any sexual parts. Su Yang began acting innocent in order to stimulate her. And I am now saying that you can. Hurry up and do it already. Feeling impatient and irritated by his attitude, the examiner grabbed Su Yang by his wrist and pulled it towards her bottom lips. Su Yang chuckled at her actions and began moving his hands. He started by rubbing her slippery lips with one hand, and with his other hand, he was pinching her aroused nipple on one of her large breasts. The examiner screamed at the top of her lungs at the profound stimulation that assaulted her body. Furthermore, the pleasure in her body was so strong that within only half a minute since Su Yang started touching her vagina, she could already feel an intense tingling feeling appear in her body. This tingling feeling that was seemingly in her blood caused her body to tremble violently, and it quickly traveled across her entire body until it reached the area that was being rubbed by Su Yang. She suddenly moaned at the top of her lungs, and a stream of sparkling water gushed out from within her body, covering almost the entire wall. Su Yang stood there silently with his gaze on the examiner's twitching body, and despite witnessing such a scene, his expression remained nonchalant. What a sight to behold, said Su Yang in a calm voice. The examiner remained silent, but her face seemed more flushed than just a second ago. After another moment, Su Yang continued, We still have more than half an hour left for this assessment, he said as his hands approached her body again. Wait. I have not recovered yet. Without giving the examiner a chance to recover, Su Yang said, Senior, I earnestly wish to become a proud inner court disciple of the Profound Blossom sect, so I will be taking this examination with absolute sincerity. Until this assessment ends, I shall give it my all. Su Yang, you bastard. I know the game you are trying to play. Don't you dare try your luck with me, Midway through her sentence, she suddenly felt Su Yang's fingers caress her bottom lips, causing her already twitching body to bend upwards like a bridge. Don't worry, Senior. I will try my best for the next half an hour in hopes to not disgrace the sect. Why, you are serious? The examiner looked at him with a terrified gaze. She was worried that if Su Yang continued to massage her for the next half an hour, her mind would go crazy from the intense pleasure. In other words, she was afraid to get addicted to the feeling and wouldn't be able to control herself. Did it sound like I was joking? Su Yang looked at her with astonishment. I am taking this examination very seriously, and so should you. I do not have time for jokes, he said to her as his fingers slipped into her slimy cave. The examiner's eyes rolled back and her tongue stretched out of her mouth, making an obscene expression. Seconds that felt like hours quickly turned into minutes, and by the time half an hour passed, the examiner was barely able to stay conscious. Her entire figure was soaking wet, looking as though she just came out of a steaming hot room. The lower part of her body was jerking non-stop, and liquid would occasionally squirt from her bottom lips. "Senior, it has been an hour. I will now leave you alone and give you time to judge my shameful performance," said Su-young as he adjusted his robes and tightened the sash on his waist. The examiner did not reply, only lay there silently. Though, to be precise, she wasn't able to respond to him, as she was so exhausted from the constant moaning that she'd long lost her voice. However, as Su-young left the room, her eyes followed his movements, and within her gaze flickered with many complicated emotions. "I never really understood why they would want to send someone like him to this sect, but I think I am now starting to understand their thoughts more clearly." She sighed inwardly. Once he left the examination room, the elderly woman that was waiting outside looked at him. "What are the results? Did you manage to pass, or did she have a bored expression on her face throughout the whole examination as usual?" Su-young smiled at her question and he shrugged. "She didn't give me a grade yet, so even I do not know the results," he said in a composed tone, sounding as though he wasn't the least concerned about the results. That's odd. You would normally receive the results before coming out of the room. Speaking of which, where is the sect, your examiner?" she asked him with a puzzled expression. "Senior is still inside the room, but I don't think she will be coming out for some time," said Su-young in a way that made it sound as though everything was fine. "Why won't she be coming out? Did something happen to her?" she further questioned him. "It is a bit complicated, but if you ask her yourself, I'm sure you'll understand the situation," he replied with a slight smile. "Complicated?" The elderly woman frowned at his words. What complications could there possibly be for the examiner, whose real status far exceeded hers, when it is only a mere inner court examination that they are talking about? Su-young then continued, "I will be taking my leave for now. Until the results are finalized, I will be staying within my living quarters, so you'll be able to find me there." The elderly woman did not stop Su-young when he walked out the door. Instead, she walked into the room that was used for Su-yang's assessment. However, upon entering the room that was oddly humid, the elderly woman cried out in shock at the eye-popping and mind-boggling scene that was before her. A matriarch. The sect elder ran to support the examiner, who was one of the two sect masters of this profound blossom sect. However, when the sect elder got close enough to touch her, the sect master said to her in a panicked voice, "Don't touch me! My body is too sensitive right now and will go crazy even if you do as much as gently touch it." Seeing the shameful state the matriarch was currently in, a fire began burning in the sect elder's eyes. Was this all caused by that disciple? "I will find him right now and—" "Wait!" The matriarch quickly stopped her from running out the door to capture Su-young. "I am sorry that you had to witness such a shameful sight of me, but forget everything you saw here, and most importantly, do not touch Su-young." "What? Why are you trying to protect him? Isn't he the reason that you are looking like this?" asked the sect elder with astonishment. How could she still protect Su-young, who had clearly overstepped his boundaries? Not to mention that he was only a mere outer court disciple. A mere disciple who still isn't an inner court disciple had seemingly assaulted the matriarch, for heaven's sakes! If the patriarch knew of this incident, he would surely flip the sect upside down in fury. "I am to be blamed for this incident," sighed the matriarch. "I have my reasons for showing up at the examination hall today, especially as his examiner. But it is also true that I didn't expect such an outcome. His techniques. I didn't expect him to have such dreadful techniques hidden within him all along." The matriarch could feel the temperature in her body rising again as she recalled the way he handled her body. The sect elder was speechless. Why does the matriarch have a smile on her face at this moment? Additionally, he is a mere disciple at the profound spirit realm while I am at the earth spirit realm. If I didn't approve of his actions, would he still be able to walk out that door after I am done with him? Said the matriarch, who suddenly narrowed her eyes at the sect elder and continued to speak in a low voice. "Anyway, forget about what happened here today. If I hear even a slight rumor of what happened today, you will be the first I visit." This is an official decree directly from me, the matriarch. When the sect elder saw the killing intent in the matriarch's eyes, she quickly realized that the matriarch was not joking and that she would definitely be killed if she leaked even a tiny peep about what happened here today. This disciple understands and obeys the matriarch's decree. The matriarch smiled slightly and said, "Good, now get out and let me rest for a bit. You have already seen enough of my shameful displays." The sect elder quickly ran out of the room and left the matriarch alone inside. When she closed the door, she realized that her robes were soaked in sweat. Although the matriarch is normally laid back, once she becomes serious, then even the patriarch might cower in fear. Still inside the room, the matriarch slowly sat up after she regained some of her body strength. That little rascal Su Yang, to think he's been hiding such an unexpected talent from me for so long, she chuckled out loud. She then used her fingers to dig inside her own pink cave, looking as though she was searching for something within her hole. Through a moment, she retrieved her fingers that were covered with some sort of sticky substance in between her fingers. Taking a few seconds to look at it, she began sucking her fingers in an erotic manner, tasting the sticky substance that was on her finger along with her own holy water. "I can taste the pure yang flower within his yang, and quite a large amount too," she mumbled to herself, and a profound smile appeared on her lovely face. "What else are you hiding from me, you little rascal?" When Su Yang returned to his living quarters, he went directly into the bathroom to clean his sweaty body. After taking a few minutes to clean himself, Su Yang sat on his bed and closed his eyes to cultivate. Meanwhile, Chua sat beside him on the bed, her eyes staring at him with a profound gaze. Why did he come home with that funny smell just now? Where did he go? And most importantly, why does he have the scent of a mature woman all over his body? Chua was curious about his life in this mysterious sect that she knew nothing about, but seeing how Su Yang had already started cultivating, she decided to wait until he was finished. As Chua waited for Su Yang to finish, she used her spiritual sense as a Divine Lord Realm cultivator to look around the sect, hoping to understand more about the sect that Su Yang decided to join. Spiritual sense is a unique ability possessed by cultivators above the heavenly spirit realm, and it allows them to scan their surroundings with their spirit, permitting them to look at things from afar without the need to use their eyes. For example, a cultivator with spiritual sense would be able to see the person behind a wall even with his eyes closed. The range of their spiritual sense also grows with the user's cultivation base, so the stronger the user, the further and clearer they can see through their spiritual sense. As for Chuyue, who was a Divine Lord Realm expert, her spiritual sense would naturally cover a large area. It was strong enough to cover every inch of the entire Profound Blossom sect. Whoosh! An invisible ripple suddenly swept the Profound Blossom sect, and many scenes appeared in Chuyue's head. Chuyue's eyes widened with shock at the number of vulgar scenes she'd witnessed from her spiritual sense after just a few moments of peeking. How could there be so many couples in one sect? It's almost as if everyone within this sect was partnered up with another disciple. Additionally, from what she saw through her spiritual sense, there were sexual activities occurring in nearly every house within this sect. And while there are protective barriers in the living quarters to prevent peepers like Chuyue, when used against a Divine Lord Realm expert like her, these barriers might as well be clear glass. This sect, could it be one of those places? Chuyue looked at Su Yang with conflicted eyes. Through a moment, she sighed to herself. She didn't want to think too much and decided to wait until Su Yang was finished with his cultivation. A few hours had passed since Su Yang started his cultivation. In his cultivation, he was absorbing the yin qi he'd obtained from the matriarch during the last few minutes of the assessments, where the matriarch decided to increase the difficulty by adding dual cultivation into the examination. Initially, Su Yang refused to dual cultivate with her, but when he recalled the conversation he had with Zhang Xiaoying at the Burning Lotus auction house, how he decided to cultivate for real so he could quickly return to the four divine heavens, he accepted the matriarch's body into his embrace and dual cultivated with her. I also have Chua by my side now. I cannot afford to be picky with my partners anymore, as I really have no choice but to cultivate with whoever I can in this world and quickly return to the four divine heavens. Su Yang suddenly opened his eyes, and within his gaze flickered with a profound light. His body also began to change when a refreshing feeling spread all over his body, almost as though his warm blood had turned into cool water that relinquished all the stress within his body. He's reached the true spirit realm? Chua immediately noticed the changes in Su Yang's body the moment he succeeded in breaking through the profound spirit realm. However, she was confused at his sudden breakthrough. Although Su Yang was already at the peak of the profound spirit realm before cultivating, how did he manage to achieve the true spirit realm so quickly without using any resources such as spirit stones or monster cores? Chua also couldn't smell the scent of pills anywhere on his body, so he clearly didn't consume any pills. So he's really... Just as Chua wanted to sigh, Su Yang gazed upon her. "If you have questions for me, there is no need to hold them back," he said. Chua silently stared at him for a few seconds before opening her mouth to ask, "Are you also participating in dual cultivation with the disciples of this sect?" Su Yang suddenly chuckled. "Is it odd for me to do such a thing as a disciple of this sect?" He answered her question with a question of his own. "Did you also do it with my mother?" Chua's following question caught Su Yang off guard, causing his jaw to loosen from surprise. "I think you already know the answer to that," said Su Yang after clearing his throat. The room turned silent after Su Yang's words, and Chua closed her eyes to ponder. "Did you love my mother?" she asked him a moment later, her eyes still closed. "Naturally. Do you still love her now?" "Of course. Then why are you sleeping with another woman?" Su Yang suddenly smiled. "To cultivate," he answered without taking even a second to think. "Is it because you are lacking in resources? What if I supply you with all the resources you need for cultivation? If you need sovereign-grade treasures, I will have them by the following day. If you need anything else, I will obtain it even if I have to cross the Jade Sea multiple times. This way, you wouldn't have a reason to dual cultivate anymore, right?" After doing the same thing for countless years, dual cultivation has become something like a second nature to me. It won't be easy even for someone like me to suddenly change my path of cultivation. Chua returned to being silent. Although she was already aware of Su Yang's playboy nature, as she'd learned it from her mother after his assumed death, it still bothered her to no end that the man her mother used to love was embracing another woman, especially when she will be staying beside him starting now. Then what if I become your partner for dual cultivation instead? Will that prevent you from touching another woman? Even as she was saying those words, her face was flushed red from embarrassment, and her eyes instinctively avoided Su Yang's eyes. Su Yang's eyes were widened with shock, and his mouth that was seemingly trembling slowly opened. However, before he could even utter a single sound, Chua continued, "I am obviously joking. Even if my mother is no longer here, I cannot." Chua made an awkward pause in between her sentence before she cleared her throat and continued, "Anyway, although I said that I do not blame you for my mother's death, you are still part of the reason as to why she's dead, and I want you to keep that in your mind every time you embrace another woman. As long as you do not forget your love for my mother, I will not be bothered by I will try not to be bothered by your scoundrel-like actions." "Scoundrel-like actions?" Su Yang smiled bitterly at her words that felt like sharp swords poking his heart. However, he did not argue with her and promised her that he will never forget even for a moment the love he has for her mother. "I promise," he said, still with the bitter smile on his face. Outside Su Yang's living quarters, an elderly woman stood before the door with a nervous expression on her face. This elderly woman was Elder Wu, the sect elder who happened to be there for Su Yang's inner court disciple examination. "Why did the matriarch order me to come here, specifically me? This is the young bullying the old." Elder Wu didn't want to come here, nor did she wish to see Su Yang, especially not after what happened at the examination hall. However, since this was an order coming from the matriarch, she had no other choice but to appear here. A few moments after knocking on the door, Su Yang appeared before Elder Wu at the door. "Outer court disciple Su Yang, I am here to inform you that you have passed the assessment with flying colors. Congratulations on becoming an inner court disciple," said Elder Wu as she handed him a new identity badge and 5 spirit stones. 500 premium points and 5 spirit stones has been given to you as a gift for passing the exam. Additionally, you will now be supplied with 3 spirit stones at the beginning of every month. Furthermore, you now have the privilege to enter the Chamber of Embrace at a price of premium points or spirit stones. Chamber of Embrace? Su Yang, who has never heard of such a place, asked. It's a divine spot within the Profound Blossom sect. If you cultivate there with your partner, the effects will be doubled. Oh? Such a place exists here. Su Yang's eyes slightly opened with surprise, his gaze filled with curiosity. Could this divine spot possibly have that growing there? I will make sure to visit there when I have the time, he said. Elder Wu nodded, and she continued. Once you are ready to receive your things, you can head to the distribution center to receive your new robes as an inner court disciple. It is also where you go to receive your monthly spirit stones. Do you have any questions for me before I leave? I do have one. What are the requirements to become a core disciple? Su Yang's unexpected question dumbfounded Elder Wu. He'd just become an inner court disciple and he already wants to take the test for core disciples? However, as ridiculous as Su Yang looked in Elder Wu's eyes, she still said, one of the biggest requirements is that you must reach the true spirit realm before you are 21 years old. The next requirement is that you must participate in the regional tournament. Regional tournament? It's a tournament held only once every 4 years at the Holy City, the largest city in the Eastern Continent, where geniuses under the age of 30 from all over the Eastern Continent gather to showcase their talents in a duel against each other. The winner of the tournament will not only receive a handsome reward that's worth a fortune, but they will also get the rare chance to meet the rulers of the Eastern Continent and its 4 great family, the Xie dynasty. The Xie dynasty? Su Yang suddenly recalled Xie Xingfang, the young lady who he'd given an immortal grade technique so she could cultivate her heavenly constitution, the 100 poisons body. While Su Yang had easily guessed that Xie Xingfang was someone of a profound background back then, he didn't expect her family to be the overlord of the Eastern Continent. When is the next region tournament? He asked with the intention of joining, as he has unfinished business with Xie Xingfang. The next one is at the beginning of next year. There is still another 5 months until then. Are you intending to join? Asked Elder Wu. Naturally, if that is what I need in order to become a core disciple. Also, you do not have to win the tournament in order to take the examination, you just need to enter the arena once. I understand, he nodded. When she finished speaking, Elder Wu realized that she'd stayed for longer than intended, so she quickly said her farewells and turned to leave. After she left, Su Yang went back into the house. When he closed the door and turned around, he noticed a figure was staring at him from the room that was beside his room. It was his roommate that he hasn't seen in a while, Tang Hu. Su Yang's eyebrows raised upon seeing Tang Hu's horrible-looking appearance and pale complexion. Heavens, what happened to you? I thought for an instant that I was looking at a ghost when I first saw you, Su Yang said to him, who looked extremely sick. Why you are an inner court disciple now? Instead of answering Su Yang's question, Tang Hu wanted to make sure that he'd heard their conversation properly. That's right. Su Yang nodded. Is that so? See, congratulations to you, I guess. Tang Hu said in a weak voice, sounding as though he was already out of breath. Seeing his unusual appearance, Su Yang narrowed his eyes at Tang Hu. You? Before Su Yang could say anything, Tang Hu quickly went back into his room and closed the door. Su Yang stood there silently with a pondering expression on his face. After standing there for a few moments, he released a long sigh before returning to his room. What's the matter now? Chua asked him the moment she saw his face, reading his nonchalant expression like an open book. Do you know of depraved techniques? Su Yang suddenly asked her. Depraved techniques? Is it something like forbidden techniques? Chua shook her head. Even she has never heard of such a thing before. Right. Just like forbidden techniques that are frowned upon in the cultivation world because of the corrupt methods required to cultivate them, depraved techniques deprives the users of their morality and drives them into doing heinous acts, mostly in a sexual sense, and it slowly pushes them into a state of madness. Are you talking about that kid in the next door? Chua suddenly asked him. When she used her spiritual sense a while back, Tang Hu was the first person she noticed because of their distance. However, because there was no relationship between them and she couldn't be bothered by a mortal like Tang Hu, she didn't even bother to stop to wonder about his condition. Su Yang nodded and said, "That fool somehow managed to obtain a depraved technique and cultivated it, hence his sickly condition. If I don't quickly do something about it, he will not only cause great harm to himself but he will also hurt those close to him, if he hasn't already. He's just a single foolish mortal, why bother wasting your efforts on him?" It was his decision to cultivate the depraved technique in the first place, and there is no reason for someone like you to help him. Although Chua exhibits deep care and affection for Su Yang, that was only because of the special position she gave Su Yang in her usually cold heart. As for Tang Hu, who she has no relations with, he is just another foolish mortal that is no different than an ant in her eyes, hence her cold reaction towards him. Indeed, I have no reason to help him, nor do I intend on being his guardian angel. However, I do not plan on ignoring him, as there's no telling what he'll do once he reaches that point where he's fully consumed by madness, said Su Yang. Those who walk the path of cultivation using corrupted techniques are usually violent in nature, and as a resident of the Profound Blossom sect, Su Yang didn't want his peaceful residence to be disturbed by anyone. So what do you have in mind? Are you going to kill him? Asked Chud, who supports such an idea, as it is a quick and efficient method of getting rid of problems like this one. He's only recently started cultivating the depraved technique, so he's not completely helpless. However, if words cannot convince him, I'll have no choice but to silently take care of him, as this place prohibits disciples from killing each other unless it's an official death match. Why don't you just leave him to the sect? That'll lead to an investigation and will cause an even louder ruckus than if I deal with it myself. It is very common for disciples to disappear or die without anyone knowing, and the sect will usually ignore the situation if the individual is not someone of importance, people like outer court disciples, said Su Yang. And I'm sure the sect would also prefer to deal with him silently, as having a corrupted cultivator as a disciple would greatly tarnish their reputation if word gets out. Then I will be here if you need me to erase him without leaving a trace, said Chua in a nonchalant voice. Su Yang smiled and left the room. After leaving the room, Su Yang went directly to the medicine hall to seek for Lan Liqing, who was giving lectures to her disciples at the time. Su Yang? What are you doing here? Lan Liqing stopped her lecture to ask him. The disciples there all turned their heads when they heard the name Su Yang. I apologize for interrupting your lecture, but I need your help with something, he said. You need my help? Lan Liqing suddenly recalled the previous time he went to her for help and the results of her helping him, and her face naturally reddened for some reason. Don't worry, I did not eat anything weird this time, said Su Yang with a smile. His words gave Lan Liqing the impression that he somehow knew what she was thinking about, and that caused her face to flush even more. Will this take long? She asked. No, this will only take a few minutes of your time. Very well. She nodded. Lan Liqing then turned to look at her disciples and spoke. Go take a small break and be back in 20 minutes. Yes, master. The disciples dispersed and Lan Liqing approached Su Yang. Well? What do you need help with? She went straight to the point. I am looking for the living quarters of a certain outer court disciple, he said. You are looking for another outer court disciple? Why don't you just ask around your fellow disciples? I may not even know this disciple you are looking for. Even if you don't know that person, don't you, as a sect elder, have something that records the whereabouts of disciples? I'm sure it'll be a lot faster than going around and asking people randomly. Naturally, we as sect elders have something to keep us informed of our own disciples. However, that is not something we normally use unless there's an emergency. Who are you looking for anyway? I am looking for a disciple named Meng Jia. She is the partner of Tang Hu, my roommate. You were looking for a female disciple? Lan Liqing frowned upon learning the fact. Why are you looking for her? She then asked, her heart feeling uncomfortable for some reason. Su Yang chuckled at her reaction and said, "It's not what you think. I just wish to speak to her regarding a slight problem I'd recently encountered. Who said I was feeling jealous because you are looking for another female?" Lan Liqing said in a voice that was slightly louder than a whisper. Su Yang's mouth opened slightly from surprise. When did he say anything about her being jealous? Lan Liqing blushed when she realized her blunder, and she quickly cleared her throat and continued, "Give me a moment to look for her." She then swiftly went upstairs to her room while taking large strides. Through a few minutes, Lan Liqing came back down with the information Su Yang wanted. Outer Court disciple Meng Jia, correct? She's currently located in Court 1 at Building 136. "Thank you, Liqing," Su Yang said in a low voice so the other wouldn't hear him addressing her so intimately. "If I come to find out that you had used me to fiddle with another woman, then this will be the last time you'll ever receive any help from me," Lan Liqing said to him with a serious expression. Su Yang simply smiled at her threats, and he turned to leave. Once Su Yang left, Lan Liqing slowly calmed down, wondering why she was feeling agitated. "Is this jealousy?" she pondered with a frown on her face. Su Yang arrived at Court 1 shortly after leaving the medicine hall. He then followed the single wide path that was surrounded by buildings on both sides until he arrived at his destination, Building 136. When he finally arrived in front of Building 136, Su Yang frowned at the solemn atmosphere that surrounded the place. Although nothing seemed out of the ordinary in appearances, it was obvious to Su Yang's sharp senses that there was something amiss about this place. Ignoring the atmosphere, Su Yang knocked on the door until a pretty young lady opened the door. This young lady, however, was not the person he was looking for. It was Meng Jia's roommate that had opened the door. "Who are you?" the young lady asked him with a frown on her face, and her narrowed gaze at him was filled with worry, looking as though she was on high alert. "I am Su Yang, an acquaintance of Meng Jia. Is she here now?" "I would like to speak with her," he said, ignoring her unfriendly gazes. "She's not here right now, please go away," she immediately replied. It was now clear to Su Yang that something unpleasant had happened to Meng Jia, which explained her roommate's unnatural reaction to his visit. "I know something happened between Tang Hu and her, and I am here to give her my assistance. If you do not let me speak to her, things will only worsen from this point forth." Su Yang's words caused many complicated emotions and thoughts to appear within the young lady. Through a few moments of silence, the young lady finally nodded and allowed him inside. "Where is she? And what's her condition?" he asked the moment he entered. The young lady solemnly answered, "She's currently inside her room. As for her condition, I have never seen anything so terrible in my life." Su Yang silently followed the young lady to Meng Jia's room that was left slightly open. "Please wait out here for a moment while I let her know about your arrival." The young lady opened the door and entered the room while Su Yang remained outside, and although he didn't enter the room, he was still able to see inside the room. Inside the room, Meng Jia was on her bed, seemingly asleep. However, what Su Yang first noticed when looking at Meng Jia was not her sleeping face but the brutal wounds that were all over her arms and legs. She had clearly been physically abused by someone, and it was to a great extent. Su Yang's eyes immediately narrowed with disgust upon seeing her horrible condition. "Tang Hu, you bastard, what have you done?" he mumbled, his voice filled with coldness. "Sister Meng, you have a visitor." When Meng Jia heard her roommate's voice, her eyes slowly opened to look at the handsome figure outside her room, but even that small movement looked like it was causing her pain. "Su Yang," she quickly recognized him and mumbled. "Did he send you here?" she asked him with fear in her eyes. "No, Tang Hu has no clue," he said while shaking his head. The fear in Meng Jia's eyes vanished after hearing his relieving words. "How did you know?" she then asked. "I knew something was wrong when I first noticed his terrible appearance, so I came here to ask you about it. However, I didn't know it was this serious," he sighed. "May I come inside?" he then asked. After getting her approval, Su Yang entered the room. Once he was beside the bed, he took a closer look at her bruises. "Tang Hu, Meng Jia tried to speak but was quickly interrupted by Su Yang. You can tell me your story after I relieve you of your pain. Su Yang then looked at her roommate and asked, Do you have any medicine in the house? Eh? Yes, we have some. Bring me all of the medicines you have here and I will immediately start my treatment, he said. Fun. The roommate then swiftly ran out of the room to look for medicines. We can deal with Tang Hu later, but for now, let me see your wounds, he said to Meng Jia in a tender voice, giving her a sense of security and comfort. I will have to remove your clothes for the treatment, okay? Meng Jia's eyes widened with surprise, but she still nodded a moment later. Okay. She mumbled, feeling all kinds of emotions at this moment. Su Yang nodded and began cutting her robes open until she was fully naked so she wouldn't feel pain from the robes touching her wounds during the removal. When the roommate returned to the room after taking all the medicine she could find with her, her eyes nearly popped out of its socket from shock upon witnessing Meng Jia's naked body on the bed. Ah! What do you think you are doing to her, you barbaric pervert? She shrieked loudly. Just as she was prepared to pounce on Su Yang, Meng Jia spoke in a low voice. Sister Chen, stop, it's not what you think. Sister Chen, whose full name was Chen Yu, quickly stopped her movements after hearing Meng Jia's voice. Do I look like someone to assault a young lady, much less an injured one? Su Yang sneered coldly, and he continued. Hurry up and give me the medicines in your hands so I can start my treatment. Eh? Ah. Right? Chen Yu snapped out of her daze and handed what little medicine she had in her hands to him. This is it? You won't even be able to heal a small bruise with this amount of medicine, much less this many serious wounds. Su Yang sighed. It is uncommon for disciples to receive injuries that require much medical attention here in the Profound Blossom sect, as we usually avoid physical activities that could possibly lead to injuries. Chen Yu explained to him the reason for their lack of medicine supply. When one's appearance within the Profound Blossom sect, where everybody is either handsome or beautiful, mattered more than their life most of the time, they wouldn't do something as foolish and as dangerous as fighting, as that could easily lead to permanent scars on their figures, which will greatly lower their charm and overall chance of finding a partner. Their appearance was something the majority of the disciples didn't dare to risk, as even something as little as a permanent small scratch on their face could potentially change their life as a disciple within the sect drastically. Whatever. The medicine isn't required for the treatment, but I asked for it anyway just so I have a little more resource in my hands. Su Yang then began mixing all of the medicines together until it was a paste. After putting the medicine paste on his hands, he spoke. I will now begin my treatment. I won't ask you to leave as long as you don't bother us during the treatment. I understand. Chen Yu quickly moved to a corner, where she silently watched Su Yang begin rubbing the paste onto Meng Jia's body. I will now start the treatment. You do not have to worry about anything, just close your eyes and relax, said Su Yang to Meng Jia. Mem. Meng Jia, who had expected the pain on her body to increase from Su Yang's touch, even stealing her resolve, was pleasantly surprised when she first felt Su Yang's soft hands rubbing the medicine onto her body. Instead of feeling pain like she'd expected, her body was actually feeling pleasure despite the clear pressure Su Yang was putting into his arms. How did he manage such magical and profound effects? The first area Su Yang covered in medicine was Meng Jia's soft and seemingly fragile neck, slowly moving to the lower area as time passed. First her neck, then her chest, her breasts, her stomach, her arms, and her thighs and legs. Once he was finished with applying medicine to the front part of her body, he flipped her over to her back where he continued to rub medicine on her soft back and tender buttocks, leaving every part of her body that was bruised covered in a green paste in a matter of minutes. Furthermore, Su Yang saved her pelvic area for last, as that seemed to be the most sensitive and wounded part of her body. When he reached that point, he gave extra care to her bottom lips, even sticking his fingers into her hole to reach for the areas that could not be physically seen. Meng Jia could no longer hold her breath and released a low moan when Su Yang began caressing her sweet paradise. The way Su Yang touched her was unlike anything she has ever felt before, and she quickly forgot about the pain in her body, as she was so enthralled by the heavenly pleasure that embraced her body that she was unable to feel anything else but pleasure. And after experiencing many days of rough assaults to her poor body, there was nothing in this world that could possibly relieve her the pain in her body and mind more than Su Yang's gentle touches at this moment. Meanwhile, Chen Yu's mouth was wide open from shock during the entire time Su Yang treated Meng Jia. Is this what he considered as a treatment? Isn't he just giving her a massage while covering her body in medicine paste? And why does Meng Jia look so blissful despite having her bruised body rubbed by Su Yang? Hell, she could even see Su Yang's finger pressing into Meng Jia's muscle. Surely that must have hurt like hell. However, after watching them for a prolonged time and seeing the way Su Yang touched her bottom lips, Chinyu started feeling sweaty, even imagining herself in Meng Jia's position. Shem? Su Yang. Chinyu suddenly found the name familiar sounding, and she quickly recalled the talk of a massage parlor within the outer court that was quite popular among the girls that was still being talked about until just a few days ago. Eh? Don't tell me he's the divine hands that everyone and their mother has been talking about lately, she wondered. After spending an hour treating Meng Jia's injuries, Su Yang finally retrieved his hands and wiped the sweat on his forehead. Because he was using his profound qi to heal her wounds by directly pushing it into her body, Su Yang felt as though he had just given over 100 continuous massages despite only giving one massage in reality. Her injuries, they are nearly all gone. Chen Yu exclaimed loudly after witnessing Meng Jia's body for herself once the treatment was finished. Chen Yu has never seen or heard of anything like this before. Meng Jia's body that was almost entirely black and blue just an hour ago has changed drastically after the treatment. Now, her body no longer looked like a bloody mess but much healthier, looking as though she had received some sort of plastic surgery. Even Meng Jia looked at her body with astonished eyes filled with shock and disbelief. Although there was still slight pain in her body, it was not to the degree to where she could not even move her body without feeling the need to cry. It was a heavenly miracle. Su Yang, how can I thank you for this? Meng Jia looked at him with teary eyes. There is no need to thank me, as I am a man who cherishes woman, even if that woman already belongs to someone else. So if I see one in great pain, it is only natural for me to help her, said Su Yang, still managing to show her a bright smile despite his exhausted state. What a sight to behold, said Su Yang in a calm voice. The examiner remained silent, but her face seemed more flushed than just a second ago. After another moment, Su Yang continued, We still have more than half an hour left for this assessment, he said as his hands approached her body again. Wait. I have not recovered yet. Without giving the examiner a chance to recover, Su Yang said, Senior, I earnestly wish to become a proud inner court disciple of the profound Blossom sect, so I will be taking this examination with absolute sincerity. Until this assessment ends, I shall give it my all. Su Yang, you bastard. I know the game you are trying to play. Don't you dare try your luck with me, ah. Midway through her sentence, she suddenly felt Su Yang's fingers caress her bottom lips, causing her already twitching body to bend upwards like a bridge. Don't worry, Senior. I will try my best for the next half an hour in hopes to not disgrace the sect. Why, you are serious? The examiner looked at him with a terrified gaze. She was worried that if Su Yang continued to massage her for the next half an hour, her mind would go crazy from the intense pleasure. In other words, she was afraid to get addicted to the feeling and wouldn't be able to control herself. Did it sound like I was joking? Su Yang looked at her with astonishment. I am taking this examination very seriously, and so should you. I do not have time for jokes, he said to her as his fingers slipped into her slimy cave. Ayaha, the examiner's eyes rolled back and her tongue stretched out of her mouth, making an obscene expression. Seconds that felt like hours quickly turned into minutes, and by the time half an hour passed, the examiner was barely able to stay conscious. Her entire figure was soaking wet, looking as though she just came out of a steaming hot room. The lower part of her body was jerking non-stop, and liquid would occasionally squirt from her bottom lips. Senior, it has been an hour. I will now leave you alone and give you time to judge my shameful performance, said Su Yang as he adjusted his robes and tightened the sash on his waist. The examiner did not reply, only lay there silently. Though, to be precise, she wasn't able to respond to him, as she was so exhausted from the constant moaning that she'd long lost her voice. However, as Su-young left the room, her eyes followed his movements, and within her gaze flickered with many complicated emotions. I never really understood why they would want to send someone like him to this sect, but I think I am now starting to understand their thoughts more clearly. She sighed inwardly. Once he left the examination room, the elderly woman that was waiting outside looked at him. "What are the results? Did you manage to pass, or did she have a bored expression on her face throughout the whole examination as usual?" Su-young smiled at her question and he shrugged. "She didn't give me a grade yet, so even I do not know the results," he said in a composed tone, sounding as though he wasn't the least concerned about the results. That's odd. You would normally receive the results before coming out of the room. Speaking of which, where is the sect, your examiner?" she asked him with a puzzled expression. "Senior is still inside the room, but I don't think she will be coming out for some time," said Su-young in a way that made it sound as though everything was fine. "Why won't she be coming out? Did something happen to her?" she further questioned him. "It is a bit complicated, but if you ask her yourself, I'm sure you'll understand the situation," he replied with a slight smile. "Complicated?" The elderly woman frowned at his words. What complications could there possibly be for the examiner, whose real status far exceeded hers, when it is only a mere inner court examination that they are talking about? Su-young then continued, "I will be taking my leave for now. Until the results are finalized, I will be staying within my living quarters, so you'll be able to find me there." The elderly woman did not stop Su-young when he walked out the door. Instead, she walked into the room that was used for Su-yang's assessment. However, upon entering the room that was oddly humid, the elderly woman cried out in shock at the eye-popping and mind-boggling scene that was before her. A matriarch. The sect elder ran to support the examiner, who was one of the two sect masters of this profound blossom sect. However, when the sect elder got close enough to touch her, the sect master said to her in a panicked voice, "Don't touch me! My body is too sensitive right now and will go crazy even if you do as much as gently touch it." Seeing the shameful state the matriarch was currently in, a fire began burning in the sect elder's eyes. Was this all caused by that disciple? I will find him right now and... Wait! The matriarch quickly stopped her from running out the door to capture Su-young. "I am sorry that you had to witness such a shameful sight of me, but forget everything you saw here, and most importantly, do not touch Su-young." "What? Why are you trying to protect him? Isn't he the reason that you are looking like this?" asked the sect elder with astonishment. How could she still protect Su-young, who had clearly overstepped his boundaries? Not to mention that he was only a mere outer court disciple. A mere disciple who still isn't an inner court disciple had seemingly assaulted the matriarch, for heaven's sakes! If the patriarch knew of this incident, he would surely flip the sect upside down in fury. "I am to be blamed for this incident," sighed the matriarch. "I have my reasons for showing up at the examination hall today, especially as his examiner. But it is also true that I didn't expect such an outcome. His techniques. I didn't expect him to have such dreadful techniques hidden within him all along." The matriarch could feel the temperature in her body rising again as she recalled the way he handled her body. The sect elder was speechless. Why does the matriarch have a smile on her face at this moment? Additionally, he is a mere disciple at the profound spirit realm while I am at the earth spirit realm. If I didn't approve of his actions, would he still be able to walk out that door after I am done with him? Said the matriarch, who suddenly narrowed her eyes at the sect elder and continued to speak in a low voice. "Anyway, forget about what happened here today. If I hear even a slight rumor of what happened today, you will be the first I visit. This is an official decree directly from me, the matriarch." When the sect elder saw the killing intent in the matriarch's eyes, she quickly realized that the matriarch was not joking and that she would definitely be killed if she leaked even a tiny peep about what happened here today. This disciple understands and obeys the matriarch's decree. The matriarch smiled slightly and said, "Good, now get out and let me rest for a bit. You have already seen enough of my shameful displays.